Hello and welcome to the City of Calexico, Calexico Redevelopment Successor Agency, Calexico Financing Authority regular meeting agenda. Today, Wednesday, June 21st, 2017 at 6:31 p.m. Roll call, please.
Mayor Armando Real.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Maritza Hurtado. Here. Councilmember Luis Pacheco.
Here.
Councilmember Jesus Eduardo Escobar.
Here.
Councilmember Bill Hodge.
Here.
All present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. We'll do next the Pledge of Allegiance. Everybody please stand. Mr. Joe Villarreal, would you lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a invocation.
Good evening. Lord bless you all. Pastor Frank Sasueta with Christ Community Church, Calexico campus. It's an honor to be here with you guys this evening. Father in heaven, God, I'm so grateful, God, that we still have the freedom, God, to gather together on a night like this, God, for the purpose of leading your people, God, the people of the city of Calexico, God, and I thank you for the leadership that's represented here tonight. God, your word tells us, God, that you've ordained all authority. And God, may they understand that, God, that you've given them the authority, God, to govern this city in a godly manner, Lord. So God, just as you are mindful of us all, Lord, may they be mindful of the needs of the people of this city of Calexico. So God, we would ask tonight that you would give them wisdom and guidance. And we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor Sasueta from Christ Community Church. Closed session agenda announcements. We didn't have closed session today, so we'll skip that. Do I have approval of the agenda? Motion to approve?
Motion approve.
Second. Motion by Bill Hodge, second by Councilman Pacheco. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries unanimously. Announcements. These proceedings may be viewed on the City of Calexico website at www.calexico.ca.gov. The Friday following the City Council meeting, or live now on Spectrum. Public comments not to exceed 3 minutes. This is a time for the public to address City Council on items not appearing on the agenda that is within the subject matter jurisdiction of City Council. A mayor will recognize you when you come to the microphone. Please state your name, place of residence for the record. While the members of the public are encouraged to participate, it is unlawful to disturb or delay the City Council meeting with personal or slanderous remarks. If the item you wish to comment on is a consent item, please comment now. The City Council is prohibited by state law from taking action or discussing items not printed on the agenda. If you want to comment on the public portion of the agenda, we will take your comments when we get to the item. Please direct your questions and comments to the City Council. City Council comments, reports of meetings attended. We'll start to my left with Councilman Escobar. I'm sorry, public comments. Yeah, you're right. We have one here. Sean Acuna? Yes. Public comment?
Yes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen of the City Council. My name is Sean Acuna, President for the Calexico Police Officers Association. I come to the council member just to kind of update them on what's going on. We have 20 police officers right now, and we've had a great number leave. Since November of 2016, we've had 8 police officers leave. Actually, it'll be the 8th body starting next week. And unfortunately, we've only filled 4 of those positions. So we're basically operating under minimum staff. I know at the last council meeting, the city manager was asked to look into the situation, and he was going to consult with human resources. I spoke with the human resources director last week, and she too told me that she would be consulting with the city manager to see what can be arranged. But when I contacted our chief, he's told me that he has not received word as to any resolution to replacing these bodies. The school, okay, the Calexico School District has reached out because of the recent incidents that have happened at the high school. There was actually we had an incident where we almost had an active school shooting, but it was foiled by the police department. And I guess since that incident, there's been a couple other incidents as well involving school violence. The school actually reached out, said, and we're in negotiations right now, but they reached out and they're willing to pay for 2 police officer positions, okay, for free for 2 years. Now that's going through the negotiations process right now. And in order to do that, we need to backfill 2 other positions in patrol in order to make that happen, to allocate 2 officers to the school full time. And again, even if we were to do that, it's going to be at no cost to the city, because we need a total of these 4 positions that have not been replaced that are still outstanding or budgeted. So we basically get 2 police officers for free for 2 years, and they'd be backfilled by 2 positions that are already budgeted. So it's extremely important that we get this resolved. Murdy, our background investigator, has been very proactive, and he's already has people processed that are ready to go. But we have not been able to unfreeze the position through the city, through human resources, or the city manager. The other problem is because we're so short, we're not able to put any type of we're not able to put any officers in specialized assignments like NTF or the street interdiction team, which generates about $214,000 per year. And I know we've been asked, we got to find ways to save money. That's another method to do that. And I guess the biggest concern is this. It's not fair to the public, okay? We're operating below minimum staff. Okay? And I know money's very tight. I know there have been some new shortfalls in the budget, but if you're able to advertise for a brand new economic development position and a public works director, and those salaries range from $107,000 to $133,000 a year, you can certainly backfill the positions that are already budgeted. This is at no extra cost to the city. And aside from these 8 police officers that we've lost,
Mr. Acuna, we're past 3 minutes. Can you close it up?
I'm going to wrap it up. Besides the positions we've lost, we've never replaced the 7 that got fired. So I'd just like to say in conclusion, if you could please help us out. It's not fair to the taxpayers who we serve them, we deal with them on a daily basis, that they be treated in this manner.
Thank you. Next, we have Javier Gonzalez.
Hello, Javier Gonzalez. Mr. Mayor, I'm going to ask you if, I wasn't going to speak about police, but I'm going to ask you if I go a little bit over, if you allow it. First of all, it's pretty much with the police. I've been a neighborhood watch captain, official neighborhood watch captain with the National Neighborhood Watch for over 20 years. We've never had a crime prevention officer. Right now, we need a crime prevention officer. A police officer, we welcome them. But Kennedy Gardens reduced its crime by 80% just with neighborhood watch. But never have the city helped us buy one sticker or one sign for neighborhood watch. Right now, we need signs. We're going to buy them, say $800, but we reduce crime with $800. We reduce 80% of our crime just with volunteers like ourselves. We pretty much support our police department, but we need a crime prevention officer. No, a police officer is not allowed to do crime prevention under the National Crime Prevention Unit. So with that in point, I'm here to ask you that we're meeting tomorrow for the 2nd annual Calexico Health and Safety Fair, but the next fair will be a binational fair. We just got an okay by the Mexicali State Crime Prevention Office and the Health State Office. They're going to participate. We invited the city. We have a pretty good committee. Sheriff, political police, fire, Heffernan Pioneers, Comité del Valle School District. So we're here to let you know that we're going to start for the second annual fair. It's going to be bigger. It's going to be better. The first fair is where McGrath, American McGrath met the Mexican McGrath for the first time. And that picture sits in the FBI at Washington. These are things that you can do with crime prevention. And of the whole group, I'm the only one that doesn't represent an agency. I'm just a volunteer from my neighborhood. And apart from that, I just want to tell you that the Heffernan will be celebrating the Wellness Park at Kennedy Gardens. And one thing that I want to let you know, and if you can give me a little bit of time, Carolyn Kennedy contacted us on January 20. She wanted us to celebrate her dad's 100th birthday. The first time she contacted us personally, and I'll read you the letter. It says, "Dear Javier, this coming Monday will be my dad's 100th birthday. As President Kennedy becomes a part of history, I am often asked how I have dealt with it." Well, it goes all along, but she told me, "Dear Javier, we asked you in Kennedy Gardens to help celebrate our dad's 100th birthday. Please do so and listen to our video, and please do so on behalf of my family. Sincerely, Carolyn Kennedy." And I just want to, if you allow me 4 minutes to play some videos, because the legacy of Kennedy and the reason they celebrate it is because public service is real bad right now. Public servants act like kids. There's no volunteerism, there's nothing, so this is the reason that we celebrate it, and we are happy that the mayor signed some certificates because we called the Boys and Girls Club. They were there, Mr. Bill Hodge was there. So I'm just gonna play a little bit about, a little video regarding what Carolyn Kennedy told us. And
Mr. Gonzalez, we're not allowing video,
right?
no.
I just thought
We
because
can
we
make if you want, we can make a presentation for next council
I was
meeting.
thinking about that.
And that way you can take 10, 15 minutes to do a
that'll be
presentation.
fine, because
That'll
you know
be
what?
better.
She sent us a video, and then they compiled different things from his father, and we want you to hear it because you guys have a Kennedy Gardens community, a John F. Kennedy Park, John F. Kennedy School, no, John F. Kennedy Street, and probably a John F. Kennedy School. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Lorena Minor.
Good evening, Council, and I am here representing the Calexico Municipal Employee Association. I guess kind of reiterating what Officer Acuña said, we are at a very low minimum staff with the members in my unit. Some of you guys know the city is contracting out. There's only one parks person. There's, I believe, 2 laborers. We cover the secretaries. We cover from A through Z. But the reason I'm here is to tell you guys that the demeanor in the employees is really low, and I'm sure you guys already know that. Every time I come to a council member, and I won't say names, and I say, why aren't employees being recognized? It's a joke. You know, I've been here 15 years. The last time I got an award for my merit of being an employee was when I had 5 years, my 5-year certificate. You know, you continue to advertise these positions at a cushiony Cadillac plan. I understand that we need a public works director at this time. I do, personally. But we have no staff for economic development. Who is that economic development person going to oversee? Volunteers? Take care of the people that you currently have. We currently have 4 dispatchers working 24/7. Why are they leaving? Because they're not happy. We are currently on furloughs along with some of the managers and the confidential employees. And now to see that these people are going to get a cushiony salary, previously the last 2 people holding that position don't make what that position is being advertised for. Every time I get up here, someone gets mad at me. There are currently 2 managers who have not taken any cuts, and I'm not here to negotiate. I'm not here. I'm just here to tell you, take care of the employees you currently have. We need the morale to come back up again within each other. I love working here. I love coming to work every day. But I see everyone else. How? And the council does not appreciate us. They do not appreciate us. Now, we were told that our furloughs were going to go away when we were told how much savings last current fiscal year was done. Where is it? Where is it? Nowhere. Nowhere. you know, make everybody be the same. What's going on? Take care of what you have. Do you want to continue losing police officers, dispatchers? I can go on. Why are they leaving? Look at that. We come to work because we love the city, just as you do. You know? Thank you for your time.
Thank you. City Council comments and reports, meetings attended. I'll start to my left with Mr.
You have a public
Nichols.
comment over here.
I don't have any paper for public comment. I have 3. Valenzuela, no, I don't have it here.
That's me.
No, I don't have Valenzuela here.
What happened, Erica?
No?
Anyway,
go
whether you
ahead,
have a
Ruth.
papelito
Go
or
ahead.
not, I'm here. Good evening,
Maybe it
everybody.
got lost.
Olivia Valenzuela, 707 Rockwood. And on behalf of my neighbors and myself, I thank you for the repairs of Rockwood Avenue. It's lovely. I don't know how long, oh, and also the regular transit that transits every day through the street, which is a very highly transit area. And it's not limited to regular vehicles, but also Greyhound buses, labor buses during harvest time, as well as semi. The day after that you finished with the street, I was outside watering, and 3 semis went by within 20 minutes of each other. I don't know if that's, I don't think that's legal. I thought there was an ordinance against that sort of thing. But if that continues to happen, then, you know, what you did to the street is not gonna last a year. Maybe 6 months on the outside. Also, Public Works. There's 2 trees, dead trees, in front of my house. One of them fell 3 weeks ago, Gloria, with the last strong windstorm that we had, and it fell directly in front of the gate of my house. I couldn't get anybody to go and move the dump tree. Gloria and I had to struggle and move it by ourselves and throw it out off the sidewalk to see if somebody would pick it up. It was there 10 days, no dice. The trash went by, nobody picked it up. So when my boys came over the weekend, they cut it up and they put it in the green thing. There's still a dead tree there, and it better not fall on my fence. It's not gonna be pretty if that happens, and I will be here to tell you. Also, it only took about 10 years to repair the streets. How long will it take to repair the sidewalks? As far as staff, I echo Mr. Acuña's remarks. We need to feel safe. Everybody that moves into any place looks for safety and educational opportunities first, and I don't think we're offering any of that to anybody. So we don't want people to move away, we want people to move in, we want to invite them in, and I don't think we're doing any of that right now. Thanks.
Thank you. Next, Jeong Kim.
Hi, good evening. My name is Jung Kim. I'm here as public, and also I was mayor last year. I'm a year before, and council member. And first of all, you guys failing to transparency to the public. And last meeting, you guys didn't publish it, any information prior to the meeting. The public came to meeting without blank. And at the meeting, they just have this one, so much in number of the year budget, and you don't want the public to know. And I thought mayor was covered, but the rest of the council member, they let it happen. We fell into transparency for the community, or some trick to the community. Community needs to know what's going on here. And the city of Calexico failing to the budget. I was 4 years fighting for the budget, just barely showing public to write correct budget, even negative. Because the city of Calexico always to fooling the city, public they spend money in shuffling around. Finally, we had the right number. We have a true budget. It's look ugly, but we are true ourselves. But now we tricking ourselves again, and council members said, "Oh, city managers are working too much, so he's entitled to hold his own salaries." And lots of high salary people stay almost same as people. And they cut a lot of salaries, and they're not hiring the police officers. And city of Calexico is a very dangerous city became right now. A lot of burglaries, and even a couple of days ago, somebody tried to jump into my house. They called my neighbor called the police, and during the days, city of Calexico failing to survive to the public, service for the public. And city of Calexico is supposedly to bring the community's benefit or serve the community. That's why city of Calexico needs it. If they cannot serve the community, there's no city of Calexico, because no city. Citizens first, then they formed the city. Don't forget that. And the city of Calexico doesn't exist to taking care of their own payrolls. City of Calexico existed to serve the community. During those, that's why they collect the sales tax. That's why they select the property tax. And they're not using it. They are hiding from the public.
Time's up, sir. Thank you.
I know you don't want to hear. Thank you.
Everybody gets 3 minutes. Thank you for having our back. Let's move on. City Council comments and reports of meetings attended. I'll start to my left with Councilman Escobar.
Very quickly, I want to congratulate the city manager. I think we've made great progress in the past 6 months. Our financials are looking less bleak. They're still very bleak, but compared to the $4 million shortfall that we saw a few short months ago, I think we're looking for a long-term bright future. It's going to take some time. It's going to take a few years, but I think we're heading in the right direction. Our infrastructure projects, as Ms. Valenzuela mentioned, are finally getting a boom. You can't really drive too fast because everywhere I drive there's a bump, but it's a pleasant bump because I know things are happening. The new Cardenas outlet is looking awesome. So things are definitely progressing in the right direction. Congratulations. And it's definitely a boom for our economy, and I want to make sure that everybody's aware of that. Ms. Minor mentioned a couple things, and it behooves us to recognize our employees, be it through employee recognition awards, through years of service, and I think it's important. I think I've mentioned this in the past, and I think it's important that we recognize years of service, awards of merit, employee of the month, et cetera, et cetera. I don't think we've really pushed the envelope on that to make it a constant or something that occurs on a monthly basis, and I think it's something that is extremely important to improve employee morale, which we all know is very low. Having said that, I also am fully supportive of the positions that have been posted for Public Works Director and for Community Economic Development Director. Having been in economic development and in banking for so many years, I know how important it is. If nobody's pounding the pavement, nothing will come. So you need to pound the pavement. And if we don't have somebody pounding the pavement, nothing will happen. As we are already extremely short-staffed, we can't continue to cut and cut and cut. There's not that much to cut anymore. We need to bring revenues in. And if we don't have a director of economic development, the revenues will not come in, bottom line. So again, I commend you for the efforts thus far. And I think we have a long agenda, so I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Mr. Bill Hodge.
I was a little startled. We need more police officers, but I know that we are on a very tight budget in a crisis mode. But I do remember that we had promised within a very short time to get at least that 5th officer, Mr. City Manager. So I would like very much to see that happen. And then hopefully we can keep striving and working and seeing if we can get more officers without any, just replacements without any cost to the city, because I'm very, very concerned about public safety. I have a flyer here about our swimming pool is open. That's great. I was a little upset because, and here's the lesson, don't believe hearsay, you know. I had heard that it wasn't going to be open, or they were going to try to open it on Saturdays only. But here's the flyer. It's for June 24th to July 23rd. I think that's great, but I don't think that's enough. It's still going to be hot in August. I would like to see us try to keep it open one more month more. Let's be inventive. Let's get donations or fundraisers if we don't have the money. I think we have a responsibility to help the school district, or it maybe even the heifer and might be open to this. So I would like to really consider extending it to the end of August. Lorena always says some very important things, and just like to make a statement with the upcoming negotiations, I think we ought to try to, I know each department is unique in a way, but try to be as fair as possible as far as what we're asking and the conditions that we're negotiating on. And one more point. Can't prove it, just heard about it, but I'll just say that we shouldn't let it happen. And that is, when we're negotiating, let's be civil. Let's not intimidate. Let's not badger. Let's not threaten, or so forth, for the future negotiations. Morale is low enough. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Pacheco.
Just one thing, we being the city manager and I have made contact with Edward Garcia's office to see the possibility of bringing in the DMV to Calexico. We have property by Campillo Street, and it's a viable option for him to come down and look at it. So it's in the works, but we don't know how far along we need to go, but that's a possibility. So we just need to have more public service here in our city instead of going to Brawley and El Centro. That's it.
Councilwoman Hurtado.
Similar line of comments with regard to economic development in the city of Calexico. In looking at that, the Cardenas market is coming to Calexico. We were looking at the fact that Cardenas actually has the whole shopping center under remodeling, and that's really awesome. That is probably what exactly that area needed. And thinking about Calexico and those of us that are a little older, is why did we lose Vaughn's, for example? Vaughn's was such a vibrant business down in what we call El Hoyo. And that area there is immediately across the street from where our new port of entry is going to be, where your sign is. And so that one conversation about Cardenas and how awesome everything's going on with Cardenas brought us to think about Vaughn's. And so I made a few phone calls, and thank you, Linda, for taking that call, because at one point I know that there was interest in that that project as well to improve that. And I mean, that's a diamond in the rough. So hopefully someone will hear that and understand that that person, whoever owns that project, has something that's going to be sitting right in front of the new door. So we're all thinking the same thing. We've got a lot of hope that this new council is now experiencing, with a more coordinated, more responsible effort to bring us back up from where we were at. And the hope is strong, and as you can see, the hope is straight across the board on this council. So we have no other choice other than to do so for this community in seeking changes. Many of you know that I do own a business in downtown. I am actively moving to another location. The parking in the area that I'm at right now for 15 years just doesn't work for me. So I'm having a new location now that does have parking, but within this change, I saw a lot of different things too that obviously we still need a lot of attention on in our council to make things better in our downtown as well. Because once the new port of entry comes in, a lot of us are concerned about our original downtown area. And since that earthquake, we haven't been able to recover from the sense of the fact that nothing's really coming back in that area. So hopefully the ideas that are going on right now, we are concerned about a lot of the taxi activity, maybe the unauthorized taxi activity that tends to leave a lot of dirt and grime and issues in that area will be addressed. Because we don't want that. And again, the concentrated effort that's going on right now, I believe that we're just taking it a day at a time because there is so much there to address. But we are very excited about doing so, and I think we have a great public works person in charge right now that you can see by the evidence of new streets and things like that, that we are putting that money to work. You have a lot of money there for projects, and we do intend to use it. So thank you.
Thank you.
One quick aside, Mr. Mayor. The funding that we have for these positions are not general funded. These are monies that we have available to us for these vacancies. For PD, we don't have general fund monies to be hiring the staff that we need, and that's the difference. That's the clincher. There's just no money in our general fund to provide for that type of hires. So basically, we don't have the money.
Thank you. I'll be short. I think one of the downfalls for being the last one is everybody talks about everything already. But I'm going to echo my fellow council members and on pretty much everything they said. But as far as our employees, I think they're definitely one of our most valuable assets. And I know everybody's hurting. I know every single department is short-staffed. It's unfortunate. This happened years ago when a lot of people were laid off. We had like about 250 employees. We're down more than 100. And due to cuts that have happened, because the city has been overspending for a long time. That's the reality. We've been overspending, and luckily now with the council and the city manager, we're taking a hold of we're being accountable with the money. That's what's happening, and it hurts. It has to, because cuts have been made. I hope everybody stays to hear the budget. We're short again, and more hurt is coming. I'm sorry to say, but that's a reality. And even though there are some good things coming to the city of Calexico, Cardenas, for example, which is something that's great. The reality is that supermarkets, because when you all buy food, it's not a taxable item. Stores like Food for Less, and I'm not allowed to say exactly how much tax revenue they produce because it's illegal, but I can tell you it's very minimal, very minimal. It's the secondary effect of stores like Cardenas coming in that will help bring other stores around that will produce tax revenue. Supermarkets are great, but they're not a tax-creating entity. So we need to be extremely aggressive with our economic development. We don't have an economic development director because one retired I think last month. And so not having an economic development director, or hearing people say, why would you hire one when that would be like quitting your job? Because that economic development director is a person that finds tax revenue for the city, and that's the last thing you want to cut. And that's my opinion anyways. Yes. With closing, somebody did, I forget who it was, but somebody brought up a terrific point on truck traffic. We, as Councilwoman Hurtado said, we're doing a lot of road construction, as you can see in Calexico. I want the public to know that we're trying our best to do it at times when it's not being used as much, because I know it's a burden to everybody. But we're doing a lot of work, and that is important. It is important that we work with our police department and try and change the laws to make sure these trucks, heavy trucks, are not damaging our streets, so we can have good streets for the next 20, 30 years, hopefully. We don't have to do it every 10 years. So again, thank everybody for being here. Hope you guys can stay and enjoy the show. Let's move on. Consent agenda, city manager report, I'm sorry. Yeah. Armando.
Mr. Mayor, I don't have anything to report.
Man of consent agenda, all matters listed under consent calendar are to be considered routine by the City of Calexico, Calexico Community Redevelopment Successor Agency, or Calexico Financing Authority, and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. Any item may be removed from the consent calendar and considered separately by the City Council. Does anybody wish to remove an item? I'll make the motion. I have one, June Kim, item 6.
Okay, John came again. And this item looks like very passive, but very important. Because this one, when I went to the CDAC, the conference, they were showing the bond investments. And a lot of cases, City of Calexico, we have a lot of cash through the bonds or the revenue. So the bonds, like the project bond, we need to have money, but that project is not starting yet, probably half years, 2 years. For example, major bonds and a couple $1 million sitting at the bank. If we have to buying from some, for example, mutual fund or some of the investment to the creating the revenue from the interest, we have to have cover for our bond, for the bond we're paying the interest. So investment, that money, we're not using that money put into the right place and right amount of the interest or revenues that covers to our interest paying to the bonds. So we have to be very carefully and smartly. But I don't see City of Calexico do that. We prefer to put that cash into the bank. We don't create almost nothing. So we have to spend. I hope these policies to change it to more creative and smartly to recuperating our interest paying through the bonds. We can recuperating from this money to saving our general funds. So I hope Council make the right decision on this for the benefit of the cities and citizens. Thank you.
I make a motion to approve item 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do I have a second?
Second.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion passes unanimously. Discussion and potential action items. Item 7. I believe we have some comments here.
Excuse me, Mr.
Ismael Lopez.
Councilman, Mr. Mayor, Ismael Lopez, 1094 Holdridge, Calexico. You caught me by surprise. Wasn't ready, but here we go. I'm also belong to the Commission of Economic and Finance, Commissioner, and we had the opportunity of meeting yesterday with City Mayor, I'm sorry.
Manager.
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 And the, where did he go? And Mr. Gutierrez, right here, Director of Finance. It was a very interesting, and this is my point, and I will not speak for the Commission because Mr. Horton is going to do that, but I'm going to speak for the findings that I highlighted it. And one of them is that there is a plan that is shown here, and we're going to see it, about the reductions. And I asked the city manager, Mr. Villa, that you as a councilman look deep into them and see what the plan is. The budget is the city manager's budget, is not your budget. You approve a budget, you support the budget, but who's going to exercise the budget is the city manager. He is the one who controls the administration and monies of the city of Calexico, not you guys. You are supporting him. So look deep into this, what he's planning on where the reductions are going to come, also on the hiring freeze. Look into where the increases are. They're small items. One of them, and I'm going to mention it, is internet and communications that went up from previous years. The explanations were there, but I don't buy them. Maybe there is more work that needs to be done. If the accounting department, the financial analysts did a good job, they also need to look into the allocation to the different areas. The cost per hour, the cost per project, the cost whatever, because that's another source of revenue. Bringing or hiring an economic development director is great, but how much that department is going to cost? It's not his salaries and benefits. It's also the literature. It's also the publicity. It's also traveling. If you say it's going to cost $120,000 a year, double that or triple that, because that's how much it costs to run a marketing, research, prospecting amount. Okay, if we didn't put that into the budget, we already start showing it. Yes, we see that the funds, the monies that are required are in the tune of $3 million due to hiring of people and also payments to the insurance and the two insurances that were not contemplated last year, but they're contemplated this year. And that is going to grow into the next 2 to 3 years. So we have to find a foundation today so we're not hurting the next 2 to 3 years. Look into the budget deeply, all of you. And I know you have the confidence in Mr. Villa. I do have it, that he can deliver. But deliver what is achievable, not dreaming. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Mr. Ben Horton. And on deck, Javier Gonzalez.
Batting third.
He's batting ninth.
Ben Horton, Economic and Financial Commissioner. I'm going to give you a little, let's say, talk about a living budget. This is what we're going to be talking about today. We're looking to approve the budget to move forward with it. Now, Mr. Lopez, who I respect very much, gave some valid points that you can work with and work with to improve the budget, But as it stands right now, this is your budget. It's balanced according to the figures. We're looking to do sharing, if you know the word sharing, what that means. They'll explain it more. But ladies and gentlemen, with this budget, we can move and adjust to it. And with the economic and financial side of the house, we're looking to look at how our finances are going every 3 months. And we'll be coming back to the city council to discuss it. So it's not something where we're just going to approve it and we're good to go, which we will be good to go. But you need to have it. And Mr. Lopez talked about Mr. Villa. He put it together. He worked with it. He has to live with it. But yet, the city council has to show leadership. Give him the tools to work with. I'm in favor of having an economic development person to help to move the finances of the city upward. Now, if you realize something, and Mr. Real made a good point about markets, but yet, because of that market, other businesses are going to come in, and they're going to complement that. I'm involved with property management, and I'm looking at certain things I have to do in reference to my property management. And I have to make sure everything has a balance to make it work. But today, I hope that the city council will look at this, and I'm going to say, sure, leadership. I'm not saying that we hadn't had leadership in the past, but what we had in the past, we can learn from the past and make the future the best for all of us. Thank you.
Next, Mr. Javier Gonzalez, please.
Good afternoon, Mayor Javier Gonzalez. I thought I was going to speak after Mrs. Myers. I'm the past president of the Finance Commission, and I was a member when all this thing happened. 15 times I stood here and I told you what was going to happen, and it happened. Mr. Ben was in the commission when for over a year there were no minutes, no financial reports. And I'm just why those same people are still in the commission. But one thing I don't want to speak about the past. One thing I want to say is right now I just came from the Heffernan Memorial. There was a presentation from the city asking for $50,000 for the senior health. The senior health program began in 2004. I wrote that grant, and I offered myself to write it again. The reason we did the first annual health and safety fair, because the same U.S. Department of Justice recommended to the city that they needed to do partnerships. We did it. There's millions of dollars in grants for crime prevention things. We need to start working on that. Just to start, there's a lot of programs. I can write again the grant for the senior health. I wrote it in 2004. That's where it started. I'm starting to put together a little program, crime prevention. Maybe someone will be interested and we can present it. The group we're putting together is pretty good, and I can assure you, you guys can get grants for crime prevention. Thank you.
Thank you. John Kim.
Again, this is John Kim. So first of all, the city of Calexico have wrong directions. They try to collect more sales tax to having more shopping center. That shopping center cost the city of Calexico to support them, to bring them. Same time, they don't help the mom and pop stores. They don't help the local small business. And they want to chunk the money from our fund, our public benefit, to help the shopping center to come down here. If they were right, we should have a lot of sales tax increased it, but it's not. Why? Because our city is blind to see what is a national trend. National trend is retail shrinking every year. Lots of store closing down, shopping center closing down, mall closing down. That's national trends. Because of internet sales, a lot of retailers suffering, including myself. But they don't see that. They are using the sales tax to support the shopping center to bring them more competition. So they are sharing the sales, nobody survived. I've been asked several times, how much creating shopping Grand Plaza sales tax? They were projected more than $1 million in sales tax. Where is that? Where is our city of Calexico sales tax increasements? Nothing there. So what it means, $1 million, they took away somebody else's. If they create $1 million. But I believe it's not. Because they have some confidential information through the council member I had. I couldn't publicly say how much it was, but a lot less than what they be projected at. So city of Calexico is giving the blank hope to the community. And they're using that one to spending money to support the project. I don't know what they get, but the city of Calexico, look at the road. The major D money, where is the spending? Spending money for the shopping center, what is our road? Rockwood is a massage center. When you drive the car in Rockwood, they have a massage over there, free massage. And lots of the city of Calexico has a problem. They sacrifice the citizens to support them. But where is the function? What is they promise to the city? It's nothing, just mirage. They wanna using that one. It's been years and years and years. It's getting worse.
Please wrap it up, sir.
And the budget and the we have limited incomes.
Wrap it up,
So
sir.
one of my recommendation, we had a series of internal loans from the waste and the water money. We might have to reconsider
Wrap it up,
modifying the loan again to make the last payment on those.
Thank
and
you.
the high salary people's salary cut instead of the soldiers' salary cuts.
Thank you. Duly noted.
Thank you.
Let's move on. Presentation by Mrs. Mayer, Financial Consultant, City of Calexico. Mrs. Mayor, we're just using this one now, right? Not the full budget.
Correct.
Which one?
Good evening, Council. My name is Susan Mayer. I'm a financial consultant for the city. And my objective tonight is to transmit and to present to you the citywide proposed budget for the coming fiscal year. Each year, the city adopts a budget to establish the financial plan to operate. It's a process of estimating revenues and prioritizing expenditures to come up with a means to best achieve the missions of the city. This is the third presentation of the 17-18 budget. We started this discussion in May with a presentation on the capital improvement program. On June 7th, 2 weeks ago, we spent time digging into the general fund. Tonight, we're going to widen the scope to consider all the funds of the city, all the operating funds and the capital program as well. The budget book that has been produced is 130-plus pages that provides line item detail for all the funds of the city. The objective is to be very transparent to the City Council and to the citizens about all the different funds that hold cash, bring in revenues, and provide services to the city. We spend a lot of time on the general fund, first because it is the place where you have your discretionary money, but also because this is the fund that has been distressed. But it's actually a very small part of the budget. The budget that we're going to be presenting to you tonight is $66 million, over half of which is capital. So again, the purpose of tonight's meeting is to go beyond the general fund to talk about the other programs of the city so that the City Council and the citizens have a view of the entire operation of the city. Tonight's objectives are to introduce the budget, to dig into a little bit into the capital improvement program to show you some of the very significant projects that hope to move forward in the next few years. We're going to give you a few highlights and actually some good news on some of the other operating funds outside of the general fund. And then finally, we do need to circle back to the general fund. 2 weeks ago, we had a discussion on the general fund and disclosed a gap in which the expenditures continue to exceed the revenues. And tonight, we're bringing back to you some suggestions for considerations on how to close that gap. What comes next? We're asking for no action tonight. This is a presentation to introduce the budget to you. We will be back in a week to ask for your consideration of a resolution to adopt the budget. Again, no action tonight. This is for information only. Here's a snapshot of the citywide budget, $66 million. And as you can see, over half of this, or approximately half of it, is invested in the capital program. And the reason that this is very interesting is despite the challenges of the general fund, the city has a number of significant funds that have large grants and fund balances that are available to invest in the city. And this is an area where we can really lift up and invest to make improvements in the city that we hope can improve quality of life, deliver city services, and also attract investment. So we will be talking a little bit about the capital program. But here's also a picture of the rest of the city. The general fund in its, the related Measure H funds collectively are about another quarter of this total budget. The other primary operating funds are the water and wastewater operations, the solid waste program, the gas tax, and then finally about $4 million a year in bond debt service. So that's an overview of the citywide budget. So let's talk a little bit about the capital program in particular. In the budget book that you've been handed tonight, there is a very specific and long list, 2 pages list of over 50 capital improvement program projects that are proposed at this time. And here's what's different about this year's budget. We are stepping into a longer-term view. We are starting into strategic long-term planning for the city. The CIP program, the Capital Improvement Program, actually has a 5-year presentation of these 50 projects that shows the resources to invest not only in the coming year, which is $32 million, but $83 million over the next 5 years. Think about the economic stimulus that could provide to the city if we can invest $83 million into the city in the form of capital improvement projects. I've got a list of the projects here. I'm going to mention a couple of the larger items, but again, I would refer you to the detailed budget book and the detailed listing of the 50 projects that show which specific funding sources are being drawn upon to fund these projects and in what year they are scheduled. The most important thing to mention here is that there is no general fund money in these projects. These $83 million of projects are entirely funded by restricted resources, grants, fees, and the restricted utility funds as well, $83 million. And I think that speaks well to the city and its ability to generate significant federal and state grants to partner with the city to invest in the infrastructure. There are some large street projects that are going on. The Cesar Chavez and the New River Parkway collectively are $12 million. Street overlay is programmed for $13 million over the next 5 years, along with other transportation projects. There are some park projects. There's a $6 million improvement to the fire station that is being funded with the Measure H bonds. And then we get down into the utility projects, water and wastewater projects. The largest item on this page is the water treatment plant. The plan is over the next 5 years to invest $25 million in this plant. With the exception of that project, the city has cash or revenues or fund balance available to fund the entire program. The only program on here that is not yet funded is the water treatment plant. You have about cash to fund about half of it, and the other half you'll need to consider additional grants that might be available, such as the state 1B program or potentially a wastewater revenue bond. And the reason that that is a timely discussion is that this is, by the way, in 16-17, you have made the last payment on the long-term debt in the wastewater fund. The fund will be debt-free as of June 2017. And so now you can move ahead to look at the investments you need in that plant and the financing that might be available to accomplish that goal. So here we have $83 million of a CIP program for the next 5 years. Let's talk about the gas tax fund. This is a fund that has some new opportunities. The existing state gas tax program brings in about $900,000 a year to the city, and it is spent on staff costs for 4 employees, plus also some materials and supplies, et cetera. But there are 2 things that are new. One is that the fund has accumulated $1.7 million of fund balance. In other words, we're bringing in more gas tax money every year than we're spending. In addition, the state budget this year created a second form of gas tax. It's very similar to the gas tax. It has a slightly different eligibility requirements, but the city can expect yet another $200,000. So collectively, between the 2 state gas tax sources, you'll be bringing in $1.1 million plus a year of revenues. Plus, you have a fund balance that has accumulated. And so this budget proposes a new program for street rehabilitation to invest additional monies in street signs, street lights, and street striping to lift up, again, the look of the city's street infrastructure. The proposed budget includes $200,000 that will be coming from the accumulated fund balance in the existing gas tax fund, and also starts to leverage the new state source of the new state gas tax for a collective program of $400,000. So this is good news, a new investment in the city's infrastructure. The other 2 funds I'd like to highlight are the water and wastewater operations. The city runs 2 very substantial utility systems that have tens of millions of dollars of assets that need to be maintained. Creating a 5-year CIP for these programs is the first step in identifying a long-term financial plan. We may not be there yet with the general fund, but for these other programs, we are starting to step into long-term financial planning, and the first thing to do is to establish what the infrastructure requirements are for the water and the wastewater systems. And that's been done. Now you have a 5-year CIP plan. So now the next step is to find a way to fund it. Both the water and the wastewater funds have been collecting user fees intended to be invested in capital, but these projects have not been, they have been deferred. For a variety of reasons, the city has not yet been able to deliver some of the capital projects needed to sustain these systems, and so we have some deferred maintenance. And so as a result, the user fees that have been collected for capital have accumulated, and there's been a lot of attention about these reserves and how they might be used or what their purpose is for. The proposed budget formally sets aside the cash balances in the water and the wastewater fund to dedicate to the capital program, specifically for the purpose of funding the 5-year CIP. The water fund, the water operating fund, which is again the fund that collects the user fees, is proposed to transfer $9.8 million to a capital program in an amount exactly equal to the cash needed to fund the upcoming remaining 4 years in the 5-year program. The wastewater capital reserve is proposed at $15.8 million. Note that this is still short by $14 million of the total amount you need for the program, including the wastewater treatment plant. That is the gap to be funded by either grants or bonds. But what we're doing here is formally establishing reserves, identifying the needs of the system, and setting aside the cash reserves so that you have the cash in hand to accomplish these goals. So the point here is that what does that do to the operating fund? If we move these monies over to the capital fund, what's left to sustain the operations and to provide a contingency reserve? And the answer is 67%. If we look at the annual operating budget of both of these systems and we leave 67% as a reserve, we are still able to fund the capital transfers that have been mentioned. 67% is 2/3 of a year. It's a reserve. It's a rainy day fund. It's a contingency. It is a starting point. As you develop and update your user fee studies and your capital plan, and as you go to bid on some of these construction projects, you may need to revisit that. But as a starting point, this is what we have. With the proposed budget, is able to fund the capital program and still leave 67% as an operating reserve in the water and the wastewater funds. So I think this is good news. It's not the whole picture yet, but like I said, the main focus here is that we are stepping into a longer-term view of the strategic financial plan, at least for your utility funds, if not yet the general fund. So let's go back to the general fund. And I think it's always helpful to start with where have we been and how does the current budget carry us forward and continue our path to recovery? With respect to the Measure H Oversight Committee, we've intentionally been showing you and presenting the general fund independent of the Measure H resources. And the budget that is adopted and presented to you clearly separates those funds. But in order to show you the trend, we have to combine them for 2 reasons. In some of the past fiscal years, the Measure H and the general fund monies have been commingled into a single fund. In addition, the city's financial statement combines the 2 into a single column because they are discretionary resources. Government accounting standards require you to report them on an aggregate basis. And so the chart, I just wanted to emphasize, the chart you're looking at here is both the general fund and the Measure H funds as well. And so you'll see that the numbers are larger than when you look at just the general fund in isolation. But this is the story that reminds us how we got to where we are today. How did the general fund get so overdrawn? Why is it that we had to borrow money from the wastewater fund? So this is a look back since the year 2011-12. Back when the Measure H fund was being established and the new sales tax money was coming in, the city enjoyed a buildup of reserves, and we had revenues that exceeded the expenditures. However, starting in 13-14, 14-15, and 15-16, we had 3 years of significant deficit spending. $2 million in 14, $4 million in 15, another $4 million in 16. Over those 3 years, we went from a positive $6 million fund balance to a negative $4 million fund balance. We burned through $10 million of reserves in 3 years. And that's what brought us to the current fiscal year 16-17. Some of the speakers who spoke during the public comment period talked about the need for monitoring and treating the budget as a living document. Since January, this is the 6th presentation to the City Council on the budget. I truly believe you are meeting this objective. You have received quarterly reports, you have received recommendations on adjusting the budget, and now we are continuing with a series of budgets presentations to contemplate the plan for the next fiscal year. And during the year, you have had to adjust the budget several times. But 16-17, these lines are very close. They don't quite match, but I hope this chart shows everyone the tremendous progress in reducing and controlling the expenditures. Expenditures they exceeded $21 million in the 14-15 fiscal year. And through the past 2 years, we have been successful in closing the gap and controlling the expenditures to get them back in line with the revenues that are available to run the city. So what is the dotted line on this chart? There is a dotted line here that shows if you do nothing, if you fill the positions that are authorized and pay the additional amounts due to the JPA insurance pool and pay the additional amounts due to CalPERS, you are facing a situation where the expenditures are growing again. $3 million more than the available revenues. And so the proposed budget tonight has to deal with this $3 million gap. We need to find a way to continue the path of fiscal recovery by living within our means, identifying the available revenues we have today, prioritizing the programs that we fund from those revenues, and matching those. Ideally, going forward, we will also build reserves. No city should operate without reserves. Right now, you are 2 years into the 5-year repayment plan of the wastewater loan, and as that loan is retired, you will again, we hope, have the capacity to build an appropriate rainy day fund. Right now, you're still digging yourself out of the hole. So that's our challenge here. The dotted line is what would happen if we weren't identifying additional areas to cut. And the proposed budget is represented here in the solid red and green line with a gap, with closing the gap. So how are we going to balance the budget? We have 4 proposals for you. Our objective is to close the $3.2 million gap. I do want to mention one other thing on those projections. Since the last presentation, we have tweaked the general fund projections a little bit. We got the last quarter of sales tax information from the Board of Equalization. Your HDL sales tax consultant gives you very precise projections by retail segment and by quarter. And unfortunately, the results that you got were about $100,000 short for the month of March. I'm sorry, for the quarter ending in March. And just think about it. That funds a person for a year. And so the projection has been reduced for 16-17 as well as 17-18. We'll still be waiting for the next report from HDL with their updated projections, because they go through and they analyze, again, by retail segment to come up with new recommendations for you. But we lost $200,000 of revenue over those two years. In addition, with the city manager's direction, the staff has gone through and pushed expenditure, the line item expenditures, down another $200,000. They've gone through and sliced more dollars out of every single department, again, to try to keep that gap as low as possible. There have been some other small refinements, additional recoveries from other funds have been identified. The amount is still $3 million, but I just wanted to alert you that this, as the earlier speaker indicated, a living and breathing document that we continue to refine as new information comes available. So how are we going to close this gap? There are 4 items here to discuss with you tonight. These are all policy options, policy directions. Right now, you have about $1.7 million of positions in the proposed budget that are vacant. That's general fund positions. The proposal here, and again, these are suggested dollar amounts. They can be tweaked up or down or sideways, or you may have different items. But right now, we have 4 items to discuss with you. The proposal contemplates locking in $1.5 million of vacancies. It means that some positions might be filled or might be filled later in the year. Perhaps you will achieve some savings by holding a position open for 3 months or 6 months and deferring the hiring till later. But I just want to emphasize that if the position isn't funded, the service isn't being delivered, right? So 1.5 million is a large number. This is a large number of positions. But one option to close this gap, to live within your means, is to hold these positions vacant. The second option on here is to continue negotiations with the Fire Association. The Fire is the general fund employee group that did not reach concessions with the city last year. And the fire department was fortunate to receive a grant from the Heffernan District that closed the gap for 16-17, but that was a one-time arrangement. Those revenues do not continue into the next year, and so immediately we have that gap again. And so an option for the city is to continue its negotiations with the fire department, to ask them to come to the table to offer up comparable savings with the proposal from last year and demonstrate their participation in this solution. Again, this is subject to negotiation with the employee groups. The number here that's listed is $700,000. There's another item here that's very controversial because the city has a Measure H Oversight Committee that is tasked with providing recommendations to the city council on how that money is spent. And out of respect for the Measure H Committee, there is revenue in that fund that has not been drawn for the authorized salaries or for the debt service payment. And over the 2 years, the fund is expected to accumulate about, when I say 2 years, the 16-17 fiscal year and the 17-18 year, we believe there will be about $200,000, $250,000 that could be drawn if this is an item you wish to pick up with the Measure H Committee, $250,000. Again, this is a policy choice. Finally is the last one, and this is the toughest one to talk about, but we're in a situation where the expenditure growth is faster than your current revenue growth. And although you hope more retail outfits or development opportunities can create additional tax base, right now you don't have that money. And the expenditures are going to increase. You have continued payments to the JPIA for the next 4 years, although at a slightly reduced level. But the largest concern is the CalPERS payment. You are starting to phase in 7 years of increases for the new pension funding policy adopted by the CalPERS board. The increases in CalPERS will dwarf the amount that you will pay off with JPIA. And so you're in a situation where you're facing increasing cost pressures for your expenditures.
Mrs. Mayor,
yes.
Approximately how much is our pension going up every year? If you would have to give us a ballpark estimate, I know I heard figures of 700,000.
There are a couple components. There's the normal cost, which is the cost of the pension that each employee earns for a service credit in the year that they are working. And in 18-19, not this proposed budget year, but the following year, the normal cost for all employees will go up between 1% to 3%, depending if they're miscellaneous or safety. And so that's an automatic increase for all employees. When I say increase for the employees, it's an increase.
But if you have to put a dollar amount on it?
I don't have a dollar amount on the normal cost, but I do have a dollar amount on the unfunded liability, which is the second part of the funding for pension, and that is paying down the debt for past underfunding situations. And this is expected to go up over the next 7 years, probably by at least $1 million. 400,000 in the current year.
So it's 400,000 the current year, and then it'll taper off?
No, it will continue to spike.
But not 400 every year?
In some years, I think it could increase by more than that.
More than that? Every single year?
Yes.
So realistically, in 5 years, let's say, we're looking at $2.5 billion possibly increase.
You're asking me to do
I understand, but that's a reality, which means that our budget would, it would have to grow by that much just to maintain itself. So.
We need to bring back a separate item to you that looks more deeply into those pension calculations. The message that all the cities in the state are dealing with is that this number is growing significantly.
Yeah.
And so what do? We need to look at how we deliver services. The staffing is bare bones. You've heard a number of departments referenced tonight that are not operating with enough sufficient staff to adequately perform their services. We are looking at line item budgets that have already been scraped bare There's nothing more to cut. There's not a way to cut $3 million from this budget. And so we need to think outside the box. And so what are other cities doing? What options are available to you here in Calexico? And one of the things you need to look at is shared services. And what does this mean? This means finding ways, seeking opportunities to find cost efficiency by jointly providing services with other jurisdictions. There's some specific, every single general fund department should be looked at and considered for how it might deliver service in a different manner. But there are some particular services that are being looked at this time, and these include some large dollar items, including the ambulance transport program, law enforcement, and the dispatch services. And these are very difficult words to say, but the bottom line is the city cannot afford to continue doing business as it is doing it right now. It cannot afford the staff needed to deliver these services in the manner that you are delivering them now. There are limited resources. It's up to the city council to reflect the community priorities in terms of what services are prioritized. But the bottom line is there's $14 million of general fund revenue to spread however you wish. But we can't continue providing all the services that are being provided right now. There's simply insufficient revenues in your current structure to deliver services the way they are being delivered now. So the proposed budget includes a placeholder to reduce $3.2 million. And there's a draft of a budget reso in your budget book. We're not asking you to take action tonight, but there's a draft of the resolution that would be brought back to you in a week, again, with any other input or feedback that you provide. But right now, that resolution has a placeholder reduction of $3.2 million and directs the city manager to seek the opportunities to identify means for shared services, but also to look at working with the Measure H committee, continuing negotiation with the fire department, and also holding vacancies as necessary to accomplish a cumulative $3.2 million of savings so that the city can balance its budget.
May I ask a question? Yes. You pointed out the fact that, and that might be for city manager as well, you pointed out the fact that there's a $700,000 contract negotiations to be addressed, but I was under the impression that for this fiscal year we have yet to close negotiations. Actually, I think it's a total of 3 unions, isn't it? For the fiscal year we're in now. And why isn't this would be something to discuss also with the other unions that we never closed up that negotiation?
There's the Firefighter Association. We never came to terms on concessions because of the grant.
3 unions have that that issue, right?
But the other union is the SEIU, the operators, where we have not reached an agreement, and that's it. All the others,
just one more.
All the others have reached an agreement with the city over reductions.
So in actuality, by mentioning this 700,000 situation here, what you're mentioning is that the assistance that was received by this union last year will not be repeated. I mean, it would be nice, but that's pretty much what, because we have to go back and renegotiate with everyone. I'm sorry, some of them have 2-year. Yeah, sorry. I meant to say those that did not get 2 years. So we're just pointing this out here because of the fact that we don't want to repeat the one-time shot. Is that kind of sort of where you're at?
One of the unions that has not settled yet is water and wastewater. So it's on impact, it does not impact the general fund. Okay. The fire union is the largest one just because of the size of the department that has a significant impact to the general fund. And this is a union for which an agreement was not reached. Correct. There was a 1-year backfill by the Heffernan district, but that expires.
We were able to avoid having to do the cuts with the help. Okay, just want to clarify.
So why does the budget need to balance? There are other city councils across the state who are grappling this week with their budget as well. Everyone is facing problems with their revenues, slowing of revenues, and also of increasing PERS and benefit costs. But Calexico is unique because you have no reserve. You have fully drawn and overspent your general fund reserve, and you had an emergency wastewater loan to provide working capital. Because you have no reserve, you're in a situation where you cannot call people to work and you cannot contract for services July 1st unless you have a balanced budget that shows you have the intent and ability to pay for those services and to make the payment on your wastewater loan. And so you are unique because you are overspent, you must have a plan on paper that shows you have a viable fiscal plan going forward. And we hope that the options presented to you are viable to you, but we're certainly welcome to discuss any other options you have as well. But bottom line, before July 1st, the City Council needs to consider and put into place a budget that represents its financial plan for the coming year. So what are the next steps? We've completed this is the third of 4 briefings on the 17-18 budget. The next step is to reconvene in a week to consider a resolution to adopt this proposed budget or as amended by any adjustments you would like to recommend. And then the hard work starts because we still have a $3 million gap. The resolution provides a timeline, a proposed timeline of 6 months to implement these solutions. You might think that's too slow or too aggressive. But right now, the resolution says, directs the city manager to achieve these savings within the 6-month period of time. And within 6 months, we should also have the year-end results, so you will have a solid beginning fund balance number to validate, again, the financial condition of the city.
Thank you. Council questions? Start to my left with Mr. Escobar.
For your report, as always, very eloquent, very professional. You mentioned 2 things that I took to heart. Calexico is unique. You used the word unique a half dozen times. Calexico can be unique for very positive things and for very negative things. I've been told Calexico is a diamond in the rough multiple times. I mean, we're going back over a decade. And unfortunately, we hadn't realized that we are a diamond in the rough and we haven't capitalized on it. We basically hit ground zero. The next step down is bankruptcy, and that's basically what we're facing if we don't make significant changes to our financial situation. That's how grave it is. I'm maybe putting it in more layman's terms. You put it in more business professional terms, but that's the bottom line. That's why we're unique. We've touched bottom, and it's either glasses half full or half empty. I'm looking at it half full as an opportunity for us to really grow given this situation and given the hardships that we're currently facing. So again, I thank you for your words of wisdom. I thank you for the very good report. The other word you mentioned that I've mentioned also in the past is live within your means. Fortunately, this is something the city in the past, and we don't want to talk about the past, has really done a poor job of doing, is living within our means. And that's why we're in the situation currently. And with the leadership of the city council, along with our city manager and staff, we will hopefully be able to set parameters in place so that this doesn't happen again. I thank you very much again for your report.
Mrs. Myers, thank you so much for your hard work, your consistency, and your honesty about it. I want you to know every night after I hear you, I have to take an antidepressant pill, but that's beside the fact. Not really. Or two. Interested in, it's encouraging. I like, as far as options to balance, restructure through shared services. I know we're referring to our general fund mainly, but the enterprise zone, not the enterprise zone, our enterprise, it has a surplus, does it not? A great amount of surplus.
Yep. I'd like to differentiate, if I may respond.
Yes.
Both the water and the wastewater fund have cash balances, and they have revenues that are covering the current operating costs. However, there is just insufficient monies to fund the long-term capital program in the wastewater fund.
Insufficient monies?
Yes.
So that's a problem also, correct?
You will have opportunities with grants and bonds, I think, to close that gap.
Would it be a possible idea to, when you talk about sharing, create a private or public partnership that would create more cash flow? Would that be a viable option?
Utility enterprises are very technical in nature, and I would need to defer that discussion to your public works staff.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Councilman Pacheco?
It's still bleak. We still need to make very tough decisions on how we're going to operate in the city. We're not the only city facing these financial crises. This unfunded liability and CalPERS, everybody's going through that, and we have to pay the state. We need to pay for your retirement. There's no money for your retirement. You know, the darn city didn't put enough money. How can I retire? I'm only getting a third of my pension. So the tough decisions are coming forward, but it's what I asked, and I told you, ask not what the city can do for you, but what you can do for the city. We need to make a we need to be committed to keep the city afloat. And we're in a dire strait, but we're maintaining, our head is underwater, and I'm feeling fine, but that's what it is.
Councilwoman Hurtado?
Just wanted to state that the production of the product itself now from the software is the quality that I think we were seeking all these years. And the fact that it is now, it's a new game. I've told a lot of people, all the dominoes are on the table now, they're all flat. It's a new game. And it's very appreciated to be able to sit down with the city manager and go into very much detail, when you have the detail, to have reports now finally that are generated in a very professional and high-tech manner. I know that some of the modules that we are intending are still not yet fully implemented. I'll be a happy camper too when we have our PO system, which is purchase orders, a little more under that control. And that overall, what you're seeing now in the city is the checks and balances at work that were not in place and that had to be revamped in an overall manner, which is what you helped us to do. So I very much appreciate that. And again, you've come here so many times and we're going over and over and over the same stuff, but now today we're seeing the actual product itself, and we haven't seen something like this, and this is what I think we purchased this program at whatever these things cost to produce these kinds of things that make sense and that have these kinds of answers for people at a moment's request and just a few, taps away. So as far as the content, I think we all agree that the content itself has a story to it, but it is what it is. We cannot rewrite the history. I do appreciate that this is more close to what actual factual history is, and I think that the council now has the proper documentation, numbers, to really be able to find some solutions. So I think that that's where our job is, of course, and we're expected to do so, and I'm ready to do that with my compañeros. So thank you so much.
Mr. Hodge, go ahead. You wanted to say something again?
We've learned our lesson, Mr. City Manager. We have determined, have we not, the reasons or nature of why we went down so much. And we stand here not to repeat those. Mrs. Meyer, kind of like a little game. Can you give us 3 don'ts for the future?
I'm at a loss of words here. I don't know.
Well, what,
Is that a question?
we don't want to
guess that's a
repeat the same mistake, so.
Could I say it in an affirmative way?
I'm sorry?
Adopt a long-term financial strategy and monitor your progress against that goal. Live within your means. How about those 3?
Okay, thank you.
Well, Mrs. Mayor, again, thank you for this report. Very grim, as we've been seeing for the last 2 years. And especially slide number 7, I don't know if that's up there, but slide number 7 was very shocking to see. This is a slide that I've been asking for a while. And I think it's important, and again, not to bring up the past, but it's important that we learn from it and that we don't repeat it. I recall when I first sat up here as being an elected official, and first I think Mr. Horton was at that meeting, at finance meetings, where when I took this seat, there was literally 2 years prior with no financials. And it was crazy to me to think that a city could be running without financials. And now, finally, almost 4 years later, we finally have rock solid numbers. And I want to thank you and the staff in finance for it. I think you guys are doing a tremendous job, along with the city manager. But also, I want to thank my council, because see, these pay cuts and these things that we have done to get to where we're at now, and we're not done, were not easy. These are what you would call political suicide, going against unions and having to lower salaries and not hire people, and it's extremely tough. And that toughness comes from the council and from the city manager. And again, I want to thank the majority of the council or all the council that actually was in favor of being strong, because we had somebody come up here today and say that we're here for the people. I mean, as far as the employees go and the council, and I think we should really think about that. Are we? Because the people come first. Without the people, there is no government, and that's something that I've always seen how the employees are important. They are, but the people come first. Without the people, there is no government. Without business, there is no government. So first comes the people, the business, the tax creators, and then the government that spends those tax dollars. Without the people, without the business, we lose those tax monies, and that's why we're in this situation, because Calexico for many years has been very business unfriendly, as many of you know. But we're turning a page. I truly believe that the city manager, the staff, and the council right now is doing the right things, as you can see on this graph, that we're getting closer to being there. There's a lot of hard work ahead. Yes, there is. And even in the future, as we can hear from Mrs. Susan Mayer, that everything's going up. I think even in our daily lives, we know that we see things going up, and en español siempre digo, todo sube menos los sueldos, and it's like that. It's every year it's getting harder and harder because everything goes up. So again, Ms. Mayor, thank you, city manager, finance staff for getting this prepared. And I really hope that the council continues to do this work. I really hope that they continue to make the right decisions, because we can do everything right, and unfortunately, like we've seen in the past, a new council comes in and can take all those things and throw them out the window and start misspending like we did again. So again, I want to thank everybody. So let's move on. It's not an action item, correct?
No.
Information.
Information item only. Let's move on. Item, I'm sorry, we will open our public hearing at 8:05. We have some comments. Mr. John Kim on item 8.
This is John Kim again. I believe that lots of community members, they knows already I'm against marijuana. Not for the money.
Sir, you're on item 8.
Yes.
This is on zoning.
Yes, I understand that.
Speak on the
starting point.
item.
So my job in here right now, so I need and ensure in our community is safe. Whatever they make the decision today, I don't see much, I don't trust about the enforcement or the security for that, the activities.
Mr. Kim, you're commenting on the wrong one. We're on number 8.
Yes.
That's not marijuana, Mr. Kim. That's about fences.
Yeah, the cannabis item is item number 9, and we're currently on item number 8.
Oh, yeah.
Okay. I believe these were the fences for the steel is going to be about the marijuana's cannabis zoning
No.
fences.
Two different issues, Mr. Kim.
Are you against fences or for fences?
Okay, I made a mistake. Okay. And I messed up with the marijuana.
I tell you what, I'll change it to item 8. Is that good?
No,
To
I have already
item
9. I have 9 too.
Okay. Yeah. You didn't put one in for 9, but I'll.
Yes, I did.
Yeah, you did. Okay, so I'll call you for item 9.
But since I was at the item 8,
okay,
the fences, I'm gonna talk.
Let's
the fences.
move on to next item.
Wait.
You're gonna speak on item 8.
I'm gonna. The fences, I agree with Mr. Escobar was mentioning about the fence and the buildings, and our areas the fences very ugly, and some fences been fall down, especially like it was 98, and nobody was taking care of it. The city needs to have, even the zoning changes, the city has to have some enforcement about the fence, put it in the right, not only change the zoning. Thank you.
On item 8, we have Gina Villarreal.
My little assistant.
Good evening.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Gina Villarreal. I live at 1260 Primavera Court. The last time I came before the council was April 5th to talk about an encroachment permit application that was denied on November 10th, 2016. As I mentioned before, as of right now, the city ordinance does allow to build onto city property with the encroachment permit according to Calexico's Code of Ordinances. I'm sure some of you may not be familiar with this particular ordinance, so I've taken the liberty of printing a copy for you. And as you can see, under Title 15 of Buildings and Construction, Section 32 of Construction on Owner's Property, it states, any fences or portion thereof, including projections and overhangs, must be built entirely within the property line of the person constructing the fence and outside of any public right-of-way, unless the portion built inside the public right-of-way has been the subject of an application for an encroachment removal agreement. The fee for such application has been paid, the application approved by the city engineer, and agreement has been properly executed and recorded. Now, we were denied our encroachment permit by Mr. Villa and his staff with the reason being that the city was no longer approving these applications. However, as you can see, the ordinance clearly rejects Mr. Villa's reasoning. If the city is no longer approving them, why is it still on the ordinance then? Which leads me to wonder, is the city simply allowed to pick and choose which ordinances they want to enforce? Last time I came and I spoke, I provided the council with pictures of my neighbors with their fence built onto city property. I would have printed more pictures of houses with the same fence, but I'd probably run out of ink and paper because almost every house in Calexico has been allowed to build onto city property with this permit. So I do not think it's fair for this type of selective enforcement to be taking place. If the city has allowed encroachment permits in certain areas in the past, I think it is only fair they continue to do so. My husband and I have been patient, and we've tried taking the necessary steps to abide by city regulations. We have put our discrimination lawsuit against the city on hold in hopes of coming to some sort of agreement. In addition to the ordinance I printed out for you this evening, I have also added another section from the Code of Ordinances regarding appeals, and it states, Title 15, Section 32, any adverse decision of the building inspector or the planning commission may be appealed to the city council for its decision, and the decision of the city council thereon shall be final. So tonight I ask the members of the city council to please help me. My husband and I have been the victims of selective enforcement and discrimination by the city, and all we want are the same rights that our neighbors and every other house in Calexico was given. Thank you.
Thank you. Bring it back to the council for comments. Oh, Ralph, go ahead.
So, Mr. Mayor, we have a slight presentation by staff.
Mayor, council members, this item was presented to the Planning Commission, which was reviewed and recommended approval of an ordinance to the City Council on May 8th, 2017, after conducting a public hearing. The proposed ordinance was initiated by the city in order to address issues related to the construction and placement of fences in the city's residential neighborhoods. The proposed ordinance makes minor modifications to Code Section 15.32.050, which is under the entitlement construction of owners' property fences. At the public hearing, no negative comments concerning the proposed text amendments were received from the public when the public hearing was open. Currently, fences are allowed to be built entirely on the property line, which is normally 5 feet from the back of the sidewalk. The code also states that under special circumstances, a portion of the fence may encroach inside the public right-of-way with review and approval of an encroachment permit issued by the engineering division. Encroachment permits previously issued by the engineering division has made it possible for the placement of fences within the city right-of-way over the years. This practice is not recommended to be continued due to the extreme liability to the city. The issue behind an encroachment permit is that it is not a permanent solution, but a special consideration to absolve the city from liability. Allowing fences or permanent structures to be constructed in the city's right-of-way is inconsistent with the basic principles of temporary encroachment. Including to allow fences in the public right-of-way gives the illusion that the adjacent property owner has now gained additional land. In some instances, many residents may not be aware that the fact that they do not own the portion of the city right-of-way, the city's right-of-way after the block wall is allowed. This item is considered by the Planning Commission for recommendation to the City Council with the following two options, which was provided to them. First option, per the city's current provision, fences are allowed to be installed on city right-of-way with review and approval of an encroachment permit by engineering. Second option, allow fences on property line only with no exceptions. The Planning Commission selected option 2, which allow fences to be located on property line only with no exceptions. Staff is requesting that the City Council conduct a public hearing and receive public input, introduce and conduct first reading by title only, and waive first reading of ordinance number 2017, adopting the following: zoning ordinance text amendment number 2017, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Calexico, California, amending section 15.32.050, construction on owner's property fences of the City Municipal Code.
Thank you. Do we have any pictures of fences by any chance? Do you have any pictures so the public can see them? And I just want to make sure the public understands what we're talking about, and that is from the sidewalk to your property line, there is certain 5 feet that the city owns. Yes. That for the most part, homeowners usually cut the grass and take care of that area. But some people have been allowed in the past to build a fence all the way to the sidewalk, and that's exactly what the encroachment permit that we're talking about is. If we don't have any pictures, I guess.
Unfortunately, we don't.
Okay. Council comments?
Ralph, has anybody paid to have these exemptions?
There are fences where encroachment permit, owners went to the city for an encroachment permit, and they did pay for the encroachment permit to be able to move closer into the city's right of way.
And in these cases, we have allowed it.
In those cases, it was allowed, yes.
Because it wasn't a lot of traffic there, or?
Well, there was a lot of different circumstances as to why it was, but one of the biggest issues that we're having, and it's not on every property, but we have utilities that are in the way, and that creates a problem. So to be fair to everybody, then the best thing to do is just to keep with the fences on property line and not to encroach, due to the fact that then you'll get accused with what they're saying with selective.
Yeah, and then you might run into phone lines and cables and gas lines and whatever is on.
That's correct.
One of the things that we suspect happened was the issue of interpretation. I think the interpretation from previous staff members was that it could be allowed with an encroachment permit, but they failed to see that there's a liability component to this thing, because where in essence, when you do that, you allow somebody to build a structure on public land. And that brings a whole bunch of liability issues, from the wall or the structure falling on someone and then who's liable for that, to the block wall blocking somebody's view, or somebody having an accident on the street and they hit the wall and they die. So there's a whole bunch of liability issues. That's one thing. Two is a lot of these areas that we talk about, the 5-foot parkway, in most cases, there are utility lines under there. There's telephone lines, there's cable lines that run under there. So when a utility company needs to come in and repair something, they need to have access to that area. If there's a block wall or that is inside of the property, then they're basically allowed to tear the wall down and not build it back again. The second, and one of the most important things is, it really gives the illusion that we're giving people more property that they don't own, and then that's where you get into a selective. Who do you give an encroachment permit to? And if you do it for one, you have to do it for all of them. So I think what we're recommending is that we don't get involved in that and accept that liability, and we keep the current requirements to only allow people to build within their property. It's the bottom line, not in the city's property.
Thank you. Fellow council members, do we have some? You put in one for item 8?
Yeah, I said it was 8.
Okay.
Yeah, I just want to say, as Captain of Kennedy Garden Neighborhood Watch for 20 years, we've noticed this that happened, and I'm with the lady. If you're going to allow one, you allow everything. But if you see like Las Casitas in front of Santo Tomas, everybody already moved to the side. There's one place at Kennedy Gardens that I have 15 pictures where kids get off the sidewalk. It's a danger. You're coming down the bridge, the first street, Lopez, the guy moved the fence twice. A car has knocked it down. He has built it back up. And I have a picture, and I showed it to the engineer. The kids are coming from school. Once they get to that, they get down to the street. The cars are coming fast down the bridge. That's an accident. And I'm sorry if you guys allowed it, but yeah, you shouldn't allow it anymore, but you already did. There's a lot of, there's mostly on the avenues. But take a look at that one. With Lopez, 200 Lopez, the kids, when they're coming from school, they get off because the guy moved the fence. Twice he's been knocked down by a car. And if a car comes down the bridge, it has like 5 seconds to react. The kids are on the street. Thank you.
Thank you. Council comments?
Yes. The liability is a real thing and a real concern, but why all of a sudden now it is, and in the past, it wasn't pronounced, as far as I know, or discussed or debated, and others were able to do the encroachment with the proper permit. These people have been struggling with this issue for a very long time, since November or even before that. I don't know how these other people were able to get the encroachment permit, on what basis. I know there are some criterias here, but we also are noted, and I'm not making an accusation, but we're also noted of doing a lot of favoritism. I believe that since they have gone way back with this issue, and now that we have changed the ordinance, I believe an exception should be made, only one and one only, and that is for them to be able to have the encroachment permit, and then after that, then we stick to what we want to stick to, and that is no more. My justification is that they've been wrangling and struggling with this for a very long time, and I strongly feel that they should be made an exception, and after that, we can stick to the new ordinance. That's my feeling.
Councilman Escobar, have any comments?
It's something that legally puts the city in legal risk? And the answer is yes, bottom line. So it needs to be fixed, and it needs to be fixed now. If we continue to make exceptions, and I apologize, I've talked to this couple before in the past, they're actually very close to my house, so I know specifically their property. At the end of the day, you need to fix the problem, you need to fix the problem now, not tomorrow, not the day after, and that's what's plagued Calexico for many, many years. Exceptions to the policy. Haciendo favores para el compadre, para el amigo, para el pariente. Ya estuvo. Hay que arreglar el problema ya, con todo respeto. Y discúlpenme, pero el problema se tiene que arreglar y no podemos seguir haciendo estas cosas que Calexico ha hecho por años. Ese favoritismo, ese compadrismo en todos los aspectos. Opinión personal.
Councilman Pacheco?
No, I'm ready for the vote.
Councilman Hurtado?
I'm also have experienced quite a bit of the irregularities and the irresponsibility that this, not only council, but administration has managed the city for a long time. So I think it is unfortunate that what you're saying, what are we going to do about the past individuals that are already benefited from those circumstances that we have been experiencing in the past? That's a good idea, charge and rent. Some of the stuff that has gone on in the city, many of it is obviously that you could see in our financials is irreparable. There are issues that have occurred where there just isn't a solution that makes sense to anybody other than for this council from here on in with our new management to just basically be able to, as a single force, put our foot down and be able to see that now we follow some rules. Experienced about 6 years worth of no following rules, and you guys all know I am the first to tell you when it bothers me to see how the city has come to this point of many different issues probably that still arise every so often. That is the nightmares that we have to live with, but we have to live with them, we have to solve them. So going back and having to give explanations to those individuals who were able to benefit from those situations, it's going to be difficult for us to be able to do that for you. There just isn't an explanation other than things weren't done right. We want to do things right for all of you so that it's an even playing field for all. And that's the way it should be in a municipality. So I agree with Mr. Escobar. I actually do support that we now place this type of a I'll say, forceful response to the needs right now that the city has with these different modifications that you want to make. However, we haven't been responsible in the past. And unfortunately, you're going to be in the middle of something where we now want to be responsible, and it's unfortunate that you'll be caught in the middle. So I do agree. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I'm on the fence, literally. I understand, and I have a legal question. Attorney, is there any type of hold harmless or some type of agreement that the city could have with a property owner to make sure that the city won't have a liability? Or
You could, but I think what you end up having, you have a structure that partially is on public right-of-way. you will also have land within the wall and their property line that is city property there.
I think my question is there a way to mitigate that risk?
You could have a hold harmless,
Hold harmless,
potentially,
correct.
but at the same time too, encroachment permit is not the mechanism to have permanent structures on public right-of-way.
Okay.
If we are going different policy, when we entitle projects, we'll make sure that that adjacent piece of land trail property either is part of the property or they keep it with some sort of LLMD or city property. But
okay.
An
So,
encroachment permit for a permanent structure on public right-of-way is not
one of the things and I guess addressing the liability issue, there are ways to hold harmless. You know, and the reason I'm on the fence on this is because each encroachment permit, for example, there's dig alert. You could call dig alert and see if there's something under there. If there's not, then you know that's one hurdle. I don't see it being fair to say no more for anyone, because there is, for example, areas in the city, and I'll give you an example. Every single homeowner in Calexico has those 5 feet. Who takes care of it? Does the city cut that grass? No. Does the city water it? No. So it's the city's, but the homeowner takes care of it. And so in a way, telling the homeowner, hey, you take care of it, you water it, you cut the lawn, you plant, grass on there, you spend money on that land, but guess what? You can't use it. It's kind of odds with me. If there's a way to mitigate the liability, if there is a way to call dig alert, which is really quick and easy, I see our staff being able to do those two things somehow. Even if they make, I'm sure that there's some residents, some people that will even pay an extra insurance if they need to cover that piece of land. All I'm saying is saying no forever. It seems tough, especially when so many people in the past have been allowed to do it. Again, that's just my opinion. The property owners maintain it, they take care of it. There's even some alleys that the city has given the people the property because, the city's not taking care of it. There's weeds growing everywhere, and the homeowner that owns a property next to it wants it. I believe the city should give that property to the people because they're the ones taking care of it as it is now. They're doing the legwork. But again, these are my, like I said, I'm on the fence. Let's take a vote. Somebody motion.
I make a motion of adopting the Planning Commission's recommendation.
Which is?
To select option 2, which allows fences to be located in the property line with no exceptions.
Thank you, Mr. Pacheco.
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. No?
No.
Thank you. Motion carries 3-2. We will move on to item 9.
City Manager, just wanted to clarify. Gifting property to the residents is a gift of public funds. That would be very rare. It probably...
No, it happens all the time. It happens all the time.
Gifting property?
Well,
from a municipality to...
You'd have to consider.
Yeah,
alleys has been given away to people. It's what do they call it? The term. There's a specific term for it, but it does happen. What is that? Is it, okay. Well.
Street event. You could go through.
And actually, there's properties like, for example, in Kennedy Gardens, where we should do it because the city's not taking care of it. It's alleys, for example, in Kennedy Gardens have been given to the residents.
It's like the Hearthstone. The Hearthstone has. Mr. Mayor.
Yeah.
Excuse me, because we can hear you when you're talking from the crowd. The Hearthstone has that one street, and they're fixing the side there, the one that's behind that. That's our 5 feet. That's the city's 5 feet, and I think they're putting sprinklers, maybe, because that is ours, right? And we are responsible for it. Well, we weren't, but we now are.
Well, let's move on. It's water under the bridge.
Yeah, but got it.
Item 9, consider adoption of 2 ordinances regarding commercial cannabis regulatory activity, A and B. We have...
Mr. Mayor, if I may, can we make the presentation first, and then we perhaps open the public hearing to hear comments?
Public hearing has been open since item 8, but we don't have to open it again, correct?
It would have been closed. We'll do the staff report, get questions from City Council, then we'll open the public hearing for public comments.
Okay.
So.
evening. Good evening, Mayor and City Council. Can you all hear me?
Yes.
We're here tonight to discuss item 9, which is the consideration of 2 ordinances regarding commercial cannabis regulatory activity. The first ordinance that we're going to talk about is a zoning ordinance amendment. And the second ordinance is going to be an ordinance amending our Title V, which includes business licensing and regulations with regard to cannabis businesses.
We need the volume on your microphone.
Or maybe a little closer. Can we extend? Yeah, this.
You can put it on your neck as well.
It's from 1985.
Okay. This is better. Okay, here's a brief outline of the presentation. First, I'm going to talk a little bit about California law and some of the more recent legislation that we've come to see just earlier this week. We also have an overview of the current Calexico Municipal Code. We'll be looking at Title V, the zoning code, and Title V, which is where your business licenses and regulations are found. And then, as I just mentioned, we have 2 proposed ordinances for review tonight. The first is, and these are for first reading, the first is the zoning ordinance amendment. And this is for commercial cannabis activity in a cannabis overlay zone with a development agreement or conditional use permit and regulatory permit. And the second ordinance is for a municipal code amendment under Title V, and that would be the commercial cannabis activity business operating regulations. And that section establishes the regulatory permit for these types of businesses. So first off, the Compassionate Use Act. This was passed over 20 years ago in November 1996. And voters approved this Proposition 215, which decriminalized medicinal cannabis in California. And since then, there really haven't been many rules, many regulations, and cities have kind of tried to analyze what's going on in the Compassionate Use Act, and things have worked for some and not for others, and there's been quite a bit of confusion. So thankfully, in January 2016, the state adopted the Medical Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act, MCRSA, which is a comprehensive state regulatory framework for licensing and enforcement of cultivation, manufacturing, retail sale, transportation, storage, delivery, and testing of medicinal cannabis in California. Then more recently, in November 2016, the voters of this state passed the Control, Regulate, Tax Adult Use of Marijuana Act, or ALMA. It's also known as Proposition 64, and this allows adults 21 years of age and older to legally grow, possess, and use cannabis for non-medicinal purposes under certain restrictions. Very recently, on June 15th, 2017, SB 94 was passed through the California State Legislature, and this was kind of previously known as the Budget Trailer Bill, and now its name is the Medicinal and Adult Use Cannabis Regulation and Safety Act. This act essentially repeals MCRSA, the Medical Act, but it incorporates certain provisions of MCRSA in the licensing provisions of ALMA. The hope is that licenses will be issued by the state in January 2018. So we are advising our city clients that they get something on the books with regard to both medicinal and non-medicinal cannabis prior to the state starting to issue these licenses. Otherwise, if the state is able to issue licenses and the city doesn't have any laws on the books, then they could operate fairly freely within the city. With the exception of the testing license, all licenses must clearly state whether they are for adult use or medicinal cannabis activity. So they're given this type 1 is a type of cultivation license, and they'll put an A in front of it for adult use or an M in front of it for medicinal use, just to distinguish those two, so they're not completely putting them together. And then another aspect of this new law is that it adopts the vertical integration scheme similar to what was seen in Alma, where licensees may apply for and obtain more than one license provided, and each applicant or licensee can apply for, and if approved, may obtain a separate license for each commercial cannabis activity location. There is, of course, the exception of testing laboratories. Those licensees cannot hold any other license. Under this new act, state licenses will not be issued if the approval would violate a local ordinance. So it's very important for local jurisdictions to provide the state with a copy of their local ordinance and contact information. A particular person, if not designated, they will go to the city clerk to get this information. And if there is a change in the local ordinance, the city must alert the state. So before I get into what the city currently has as regulations on the books, I just wanted to go through a little timeline of what got us to here. In October 2016, at a regular city council meeting, there was a presentation regarding medical cannabis. Then in 2016, in November 2016, the city attorney provided a presentation regarding the implications of Proposition 64's approval. Then in January of earlier this year, there was an ordinance presented and approved amending Chapter 5.96 regarding regulatory permits for cultivation, manufacturing, and distributing. On April 26, 2017, we had a scoping meeting here in City Hall with consultants, and we presented our idea of where the cultivation zone would be, or the cannabis activity zone would be, and received public comment for that, which helped us in creating these ordinances. Last month in May, to the 22nd of May, the Planning Commission met and reviewed and recommended to City Council the zoning ordinance amendment that is before you tonight. We also gave them information on the regulatory permit ordinance, even though it was not something that they were tasked to vote on. We did want to provide that information to not only the planning commissioners, but also to the public that was in the audience, and we received great feedback on that as well. So currently, all medical marijuana businesses are banned in all zones. Under the Calexico Municipal Code Title 17, that is a zoning code provision where the ban can be found, and that was adopted in January. The zoning code is actually silent on recreational marijuana businesses. There is no ban, there are no regulations, and as I mentioned before, it's important to have both medical and recreational cannabis regulations on the books before the state starts issuing licenses. Under Title V, the city has adopted some business operating requirements, and the city does require, in addition to a zoning, either development agreement or conditional use permit, the city would be requiring a regulatory permit as well, and that's simply an operating permit. So now I'll go through a summary of the zoning ordinance amendment and then go into more detail on these areas. First, there's a zoning limit, and our limit is called the Cannabis Overlay Zone. We have maps up of the proposed Cannabis Overlay Zone, but I will go into more detail in that in a few minutes. There are also land use limits built into the zoning ordinance. There are 10 businesses per activity type, 2 permits per applicant. Only certain types of businesses are allowed. That means the city is not currently looking to allow dispensaries or retail sales. There's a need for a development agreement first, and then a conditional use permit at a later time. Businesses are limited to 1 use, and 2 permits can be given per applicant. There are also some other restrictions, such as density on the parcel, distance requirements between schools, odor mitigation, visibility, and state licensing and compliance is required. So to go over the Cannabis Overlay Zone, the proposed zone includes approximately 354 acres within the area bounded by railroad tracks on the west, the Alder Kennel on the north, West Van de Graaff Avenue and Scaroni Avenue on the east, and Weekly Street and Camacho Road on the south. The Cannabis Overlay Zone includes industrial rail served, and commercial zones. And here's a greater detail of the map. We also have a couple printed for your review. So why this area? Staff looked at this area and thought that it would be a great place to include these types of uses because it's highly industrialized. There are some vacant parcels. There are some public nuisance parcels in that they're blighted or in disrepair, such as the wrecking yards, and these areas could be cleaned up and revitalized with these new sorts of uses. It's also important to note that there are some non-conforming residential uses in the southern portion of the overlay zone. So as I mentioned, there are only certain types of permitted businesses being considered by the city at this point. And those include cultivation, manufacturing, testing, distribution, and transportation. They do not include dispensaries, delivery, or retailers. So there would not be a business in the city of Calexico where a person could go in and buy product for their own personal use. Ten permitted business per activity type. The city may authorize up to 10 operators per type of commercial cannabis activity. This idea was an expansion on what we looked at with the Planning Commission, and after receiving comments from commissioners and from the public, it seemed that allowing only 10 of these types of businesses would be too restrictive, and many of the industry folks expressed concern and asked that we look into allowing a business that potentially could include cultivation and manufacturing on site, which is something that we've seen in many other cities. So there are 4 types allowed. There are the cultivation, manufacturing, testing, and distribution and transportation are very similar and treated quite similarly under the new law. So we bunch them together right there. We are also looking at allowing up to 2 permits per applicant. Each applicant can apply for up to 2 permits to operate 2 commercial cannabis businesses. And of course, those are cultivation, manufacturing, and a distribution/transportation type business. Of course, if it's a testing laboratory, they cannot operate any other type of activity under state law. Also, under the zoning ordinance amendment, we're looking at land use entitlement. So we would first work with developers by negotiating development agreements, and then later, after a ballot measure is gone through and passes with the votes of the citizens, then we could move into a conditional use permit process. Prior to initiating operations and as a continuing requisite to operating a commercial cannabis activity, the applicant would need to have a CUP or enter into a fully executed development agreement approved by council, and in addition to that, a regulatory permit is also required. As I mentioned initially, applicants will be required to enter into a development agreement, which would include appropriate fiscal mitigation measures, conditions of approval, and terms as approved by the City Council. As part of the development agreement, there would be a description of a project, the term of the project, other land use regulations, fiscal mitigation measures, records or requirement that records are kept and able to be reviewed on a timely basis and request, an audit, also hours for construction and for operation, indemnification provisions protecting the city, CEQA review, and conditions of approval similar to those seen in a conditional use permit.
Why would there be a need for a CEQA since it's not affecting the environment? It's everything is internal inside with ways of keeping the smell and the odor and all that.
Just so we don't get sued.
Yeah,
Right.
we obviously the environmental analysis would be dictated by the specific project we're looking at, but generally we would have some sort of environmental analysis. Obviously, if the site would be built out, obviously, potentially we would not need to do an extensive environmental analysis, but if it's vacant land, they need entitlements, and we'd probably have to go through a full environmental review. But that would probably be more determined on a per project specific basis.
That's correct. That would be done more on a case-by-case basis, and there is some land in the zone that's vacant, and that might require a greater CEQA review. Then, under a conditional use permit, conditional use permits will not be issued until the effective date of an approved ballot measure authorizing the taxation of commercial cannabis activity in the city. The city is looking at the possibility of getting this type of ballot measure on the ballot this year, and if that's not possible, the city would look to propose such a ballot measure during the general election in 2018. So we are working on that and working on different tax structures to bring before you. The conditional use permit. Under Calexico Municipal Code, Title 17, Article 5, there are general conditional use permit provisions that require an application, planning commission review, required findings, a lapse after 1 year if there's no action, suspension and revocation, violations and penalties. Those provisions all currently exist under Title 17 and would be followed under this zoning ordinance unless there's anything conflicting in the proposed ordinance. So tax options, as I mentioned, this is not any part of either the zoning ordinance or the regulatory permit ordinance tonight, but we do need to be thinking about and developing the tax options. So one idea is to create a dollar amount, perhaps $15 per square foot of canopy or floor area. You can also look at taking a percentage of gross wholesale receipts, perhaps an up to 6% of gross wholesale receipts. And other cities have tried a combination approach where they will initiate a tax that has both the dollar amount per square feet plus a percentage of gross wholesale receipts. Parcel density limit. The city is looking at limiting these types of activities to no more than 75% of the acreage of a legal parcel in the cannabis overlay zone. There is also a distance requirement proposed of 600 feet from any K through 12 school, preschool, child care center, park, or playground. We initially had this at 500 feet before Planning Commission, and since that time, some new regulations came out, and also new law came out that had, under the state, that had this at a 600-foot limit, and so we thought that it would be appropriate to be in line with what the state was proposing here. Indoors only. The city is looking to allow cannabis cultivation, manufacturing, and testing indoors only. There are noxious odors associated with these types of uses, and if we keep them indoors and require appropriate ventilation standards, then we can reduce these potential impacts. And under the regulatory permits scheme, there are building standards that address this issue particularly. And as I mentioned, odor control, it is an issue, and the city is looking to require such mitigation that the activity will not result in the creation of any odors that are detectable anywhere off the property boundaries. And as I said before, the regulatory permit requires an odor management plan, including certain ventilation measures. Another part of the zoning ordinance amendment is that cannabis may not be visible from the public right-of-way, any unsecured areas, or the main entrance of the premises. And a state license will be required. So all applicants for local licenses must also have state licenses or permits and submit a copy of all these state licenses or other local licenses and permits to the city. A reimbursement agreement is also part of the zoning code amendment. With each application, the applicant must provide an executed reimbursement agreement to fully reimburse the city for all the fiscal impacts, costs, and expenses and fees, which would include attorney's fees, consultant fees, and other fees and costs incurred by the city related to the commercial cannabis activity, and a deposit in amount as provided for in the reimbursement agreement terms. This is pretty standard for developments to have these types of reimbursement agreements. So now I'm going to move on to the Title V amendment. This is an amendment to Title V of the Municipal Code. As I mentioned earlier, in January, the city looked at this and they did adopt some new regulatory permit guidelines. And what we've simply done is update them, kind of add more to them once we've seen what some of the proposed regulations are and the new law. So these, as we know, each applicant must obtain both a development agreement or conditional use permit and a regulatory permit from the city. And the regulatory permit provides operating and building standards. As part of the regulatory permit application, we would be requiring each applicant to provide comprehensive applicant entity information, extensive financial disclosures, copies of all other state or locally issued licenses, a security plan, an odor control plan, a business plan, community relations plan, a neighborhood responsibility plan, proof of adequate insurance, a budget, and authorization for live scan fingerprinting. So to go into these requirements a little bit deeper, the comprehensive applicant information that we're looking at would be, of course, the name, address, and telephone number of the applicant, a description of their business form and copy of the formation and organizing documents, and the name, address, telephone number, title, and function of each interested party, and photo identification. We would also want a list of license types issued by the state or other jurisdictions, whether the applicant has been denied a license or permit with the city or another jurisdiction, the proposed commercial cannabis activities physical address, telephone number, website address, etc., a primary contact person, and a list of every fictitious business name the applicant has been operating under, including their address. We would also be looking for extensive financial disclosures from applicants. This would include a list of funds belonging to the commercial cannabis business held in savings, checking, and other accounts maintained by a financial institution. We would also want to see a list of loans made to the commercial cannabis business, a list of investments made to the commercial cannabis business, and lists of all gifts of any kind to the applicant for its use in conducting this type of activity. We would also want copies of all other state and locally issued cannabis-related permits or licenses. As part of the permit application process, a detailed diagram of the premises would be important to show all the boundaries, dimensions, and entrances, exits, where cannabis is to be stored, and the like. A security plan is also part of the application. Security cameras must be installed and maintained in good condition. They must have at least 240 concurrent hours of digitally recorded documentation in a format approved by the city manager. And the cameras will be used 24/7. The premises must be alarmed with an audible interior and exterior alarm system, and the entrance to these areas and any storage areas must be locked at all times and under the control of the cannabis facility staff. Continuing on with the security plan, all cannabis must be securely stored. There must be a licensed security guard present at the premises during all hours of operation, and if that person is to be armed, they must receive a permit issued by the California Department of Consumer Affairs. We would also be requiring a heavy gauge chain link or other material fence at a minimum of 8 feet in height to to be constructed around the premises. As mentioned earlier, the odor control plan. This is a plan that describes the air treatment system or other methods that would be implemented to prevent odors being generated on site from being able to be noticed outside of the premises. A business plan is also required, a plan describing how the activity would operate in accordance with the city's code, with state law, and other applicable regulations. This plan must include plans for handling cash and transporting the product from the premises, if applicable. Also, we would require a community relations plan. This type of plan would be describing a person who is designated to outreach with the community and communicate with the surrounding areas, including neighborhoods, and we would have to have contact information for this person so that they could be on call if there were any issues in the community that needed to be addressed. The neighborhood responsibility plan. It's similar to the community plan, but it's more focused on a particular neighborhood right around where the activity would be ongoing. We would also be requesting proof of adequate insurance from the applicant and a copy of the applicant's most recent annual budget for operations. And we would require that each applicant authorize the city to obtain live scan fingerprinting and get reporting from the California Department of Justice and the FBI. As I mentioned, for the regulatory permit, there would be federal, state, and local background checks. And each applicant would have to continue to operate in compliance with their proposed security plan, odor control plan, business plan, community relations plan, and neighborhood responsibility plan that were submitted with their initial application. Each business would also be required to use a seed-to-sale or track and trace system, which there is software for, that produces historical transactional data for review by the city manager for auditing purposes. These types of software actually start when the product is just grown, either a seed or a small plant, and they have unique identifiers that follow them through the whole process from when they're grown to whether they're manufactured, when they go to testing, when they're distributed, and when they finally get to the dispensary or retail site. All records must be available to the city for the past 3 years on 24-hour notice. Retail sales of cannabis products are prohibited on these types of business sites. Cannabis consumption is also prohibited. Alcohol is prohibited and juveniles are prohibited. There are certain building standards in Title V dealing with entrances, the main entrance and lobby, and activity area. The entrances have to be locked at all times, and the entry is controlled by the manager. Codes for entry are provided for law enforcement. The main entrance that's visible from the public street and lobby to receive visitors is a certain place where the manager needs to be there at all times and make sure that people visiting the site are actually allowed to be on the building site. There's no commercial selling of the product to individuals in these types of sites. The activity area is the area where cultivation, manufacturing, or testing is going on in the building. And those areas are separated from the main entrance and lobby and must be secured by a lock that's only accessible to managers and staff.
This is everything.
And the regulatory permit must be displayed on a prominent location, usually in the lobby area. The city manager or designee may make periodic unannounced inspections and review documents and records. And the city would require full compliance with state law. And then these remaining items, grounds for denial, the 2-year term, renewal provisions, suspension and revocation, and violations and penalties, those are typical sections that we have when dealing with any sort of regulatory permit. So, you know, what requires something to be, or what would necessitate a suspension or a revocation is included in those provisions. And it's usually if there's something that's being done that's in violation of the city code or of state law. And that's the end of my presentation. If you have any questions of staff, we can hear those now.
I'll refer to my fellow council members. If you have any questions?
I have no questions, sir.
Mr. Hodge, do you have any questions?
No.
Councilman Pacheco?
Just the fact that the city manager can have a designee, I'm sure he's not going to be running around all the time to make visits, but he's going to have other individuals that are capable of checking things out.
Yeah, this could be anyone in the police department, our code enforcement department, our development services department, to check those things.
Councilwoman Hurtado, comments?
I have several concerns, and I have addressed those concerns with the management and legal departments of the City of Calexico, Jill, Mr. Campos. With regard to the concerns of a violation of the Brown Act, when we started all of this. So, I don't know if, is this still the public hearing? Did you open up the public hearing?
It's open now. Public hearing is open.
We have not opened the public hearing yet. Let's take council comments and then we can open the public hearing.
Okay, so
and then take
council, we're still on
that.
council comments. Okay.
A couple of concerns that I have that I addressed it with the Planning Commission at the last Planning Commission meeting was that the designated property includes several parcels that the city had received federal funding on. And the fact that we will be then designating the same land as approved for a state, whether it's conflictive with federal law, bothers me and concerns me for this council to ensure that that will not jeopardize future granting opportunities, because we all know that that property out there had a lot of issues in itself when we first established that, and we had some very major problems in the process to even get that funding. So that was just resolved probably about 3 years ago, and here we are wanting to do this. The other concern is that we don't have a police department that will be able to tolerate this. And as much as you all want to say that it's very safe, there is no guarantee. We are on a border, and we all know where we live. And we all know what we just experienced. And so the fact that this process started in October of last year, and that's the conversation we had, was we jumped. We jumped the process as far as agendizing a discussion on this council to invite the public at the beginning of this. And that didn't happen until today. And I see it more now, because now I'm seeing that the city of El Centro, the other cities of the county, and the county themselves are taking very different steps in their process, and I'll call it very responsible steps. We weren't responsible. And what I believe that's important is that the community have the opportunity to know this is happening to them, which they didn't. They were only invited to a presentation, and the presentation was about certain products that were yet to be approved by the federal government, which is fine. I mean, everyone has the opportunity to be able to believe in experimental drugs. I'm a cancer survivor myself, so I lost my mother to cancer. And so I know, and I'm very sensitive to what's out there as far as cures for cancer. However, this city just went through very difficult things. We have a broken down police department. We've had 6 city managers in 6 years, and you're the plans talk about a city manager being in charge. So honestly, a lot of people think that this opportunity is not necessarily being played fair. We need to basically give the citizens a lot more respect to have their opinion as well. I wasn't going to say anything today because I figured I didn't want to make a little more controversy and stuff like that. However, I am very concerned about the violation. I have already made very aware to my members as well. And if we'd like to be able to discuss that further, I think it's important. Anyone out there that'd like to ask me about my concerns, I know I'm out here alone on this concern, and that's okay. We've done that already before. Sometimes you got to go against the grain. But what I'm thinking about is the community, and if the community is included in these types of very controversial projects, and your community says it's okay, then go for it. But at this point, you haven't given your community the appropriate opportunity. And I say that because I'm comparing to my other cities here locally and how they have proceeded, and that they have had an agenda item on their agenda that specifically said council discussion in order to give a city manager the direction to move forward with what you're at right now. And I believe that we're a little advanced, probably a good almost a year or 7 or 8 months advanced when the citizens have not had any participation. And I don't want to, like you said, so important to have the citizens involved. But in this one project, we didn't. So I think that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you. Does anyone like to add anything? I would just, go ahead.
Mr. City Manager, she raises some concerns. What step have we jumped over, or have we, in your opinion?
I guess I would ask legal and the city manager, same thing. Have we taken the proper steps to do this?
From the legal perspective, yeah, there's nothing.
Okay. Just want to make sure we don't.
I'm sorry, I was asking legal for the actual agenda item from October for the presentation to January when we received all this stuff that started to happen. Where was the direction, the legal direction, when 5 of us sat together and we gave direction to our city manager to move forward with this process? That is your challenge.
There is, the problem is that.
That is your challenge, probably.
The problem is that there are, as you should know, there are different ways to get agenda items on the agenda. It's not just in public comment.
Right, but in
speaking
conversations
to,
with our city manager.
even with a telephone call, something can be put on the agenda. Yes, the mayor can put something on the agenda with a telephone call. Let's move on.
I'm pretty sure that the city manager, if he knew that he was going to put something on the agenda that had a lot to do with the concerns of a community, a bruised community, a recently bruised, that he probably would ensure that he had proper direction.
And that's my question. Was everything followed? I'm asking the attorney and the city manager. They're stating everything was followed correctly, so let's move on. One other question, as far as the concern for this federal property that I have also heard of, and I myself have also asked the question, and regarding to that is, there is nothing that the EDA grant, which is a federal grant that was given for infrastructure for that property, there is no conflict whatsoever on that property other than the job creation that will be done in that property will not count for the EDA grant. And that is from what the information I have gotten. Is that correct?
Well, we suspect that because of the conflict with federal law and state law, that if we try to apply for job creation in this field, that it may not be accepted.
Okay. Wow. All right. But it is legal for this
the use of the property.
The use of the property.
This just provides another use of the property.
Use of the property. Okay.
An additional.
So it is legal for cannabis to be grown on that property. The federal government cannot say they don't, because they have an EDA grant for infrastructure, they cannot stop somebody from growing cannabis on that property.
If we can't speak for the federal government in terms of the EDA grant, they can still use a property for other uses that are not based on cannabis. This just allows for an additional use. The underlying uses that are allowed in our zone are still there.
Okay.
It just provides another use of the property grow.
Thank you. I have one question. I never closed the public comment on item 8.
Correct.
So I will close the public comment on item 8 at 9:15 and open public comment on item 9 at 9:16. Let's open the public comment first. We have Mr. Jong Kim.
Hi, my name is Jung Kim, not Jong Kim.
How do I pronounce that?
Jung Kim.
June.
Jung Kim.
June, okay. I'm sorry.
I know that Spanish doesn't have the sounds from the Jung, they don't have it. But yes,
Okay.
in Korean, yes, we do. Okay. First of all, I heard about what is for the benefit for the Calexico for the future, and they were saying the three things. Mr. Hatch asking, Mr. Mayor was responded to the things, but she forget, but she doesn't know about city of Calexico. One thing she have to add in, whatever to put it there, she have to put in say, honest to yourself. We have a council member, lying the person itself to him or her, that how we can trust our council make the right decisions. With that kind of mentalities to make running the city of Calexico more than 20 years. And that's why city of Calexico is in trouble right now. And this one, medical canopy, the another ones. And I understanding city of Calexico, January 2016, we moratorium on all the cannabis activities, even distributing cultivations, and then now they put it in this agenda. And they play the game with the city ordinance because they are not honest. And the way to put it, the other was questioning. I believe the mayor has the right to put on the agenda. That's why that's happening. And I believe the January 2016, I was fight with some council member, arguing with the council member, to get through to stop the marijuana canopy. I don't see much beneficial for the economy, and also I see a lot of the unbeneficial for the morality on the communities. And now I'm worrying about if this one can pass, and now I'm worrying about our children's, they're gonna have a full of the marijuana in their pocket. They cut some girls and marijuana selling in the school. And lots of marijuana is in the involvement. And how are we gonna secure those kind of activities for the upcoming, for the jeopardizing our children's future? Somebody saying it's not harming. There is harming in that one. And I believe we don't have strong structure to secure those things to a bad impact. Right now, we have a law, federal law, but still there are lots of drugs in the marijuana in the school. How are we gonna control after this one? We cultivating ourselves. There's no guarantee it's gonna be leaking.
Please wrap up your comments, sir.
And one thing, CBP, they told us any person who's carrying the marijuana is going to be against, they're going to be arrested.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Let's move on. I have Alan Weinstein.
Good evening, City Council. So I'm a local business and property owner here in Calexico. Pardon me? Oh, I'm sorry. So I wanted to ask the City Council if they're willing to consider something outside the outlay zone, which has not yet been approved, I don't think. If a building was to be secured by a brick building, for an example, second, third stories that have virtually no windows, you can mitigate the odor from that building with a little bit of ventilation if needed at all.
Sir, if I understand you correctly, this is to speak on regards to the item, if you're for or against, as far as possibly doing something else out of the zone. Is that what you're trying to consider?
Correct.
That would be something that you would have to maybe make an appointment with the city manager and planning and see if there's something that they would like to bring to the council, but
Okay, I'm sorry, I was under the impression
yeah.
that this would be the right place and time to bring this up.
No, this would be speaking in favor or against the item, pretty much.
I'm sorry to
No worries.
take the 30 seconds then.
No worries.
Thank you.
It's okay.
But I invite you to meet with our city manager or Mr. Ralph, would you like to give him a card? And,
I think I already have one.
oh, okay, all right. Next is Anthony Velasco. Anthony Velasco is in favor. No, no Anthony Velasco. Victor Rocha.
Good evening, members of the council. I appreciate the time that you have given to me so we can make some statements and comments in regards to the favor of the implementation of the zoning regulation.
Give me 1 second, sir. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't. There we go.
In regards to the proposed zoning regulations.
Yes. Next one. Right there.
As in regards to, as I presented my favor in regards to the zoning regulations. Myself, I am a retired forensic scientist. My endeavors as a member of society here in the community started more than 45 years ago with the foundation of the rescue teams for helping people crossing the border. That gave me a position to be named a subject matter expert for the State Department. Upon my retirement, I studied the research, scientific research of cannabis for specific ailments that plagued myself with cancer and diabetes, my nephews with autism, my mother with Parkinson's and Alzheimer's. Of all of them, I have cured. Moreover, I have here several people resident in the city of Calexico, the city of El Centro, which are patients with autism and cancer, hypoxias that I am at this moment helping on a donated complete basis. Why? Because of the sharing of knowledge that I do believe is required for the society of this town. My proposal to you, council, is to include also on your ordinances a proposal for a coordinated effort from all the licensees. They will be granted a permit for them to fund and finance a specific location, clinic, or educational area in which the members in society in general can go and can ask the pertinent questions. I do believe that as society, we have reached a point of maturity in which we cannot be closed to open-mindedness, to thinking outside of the box. This city is bankrupt. This city requires income. This city requires and have a chance through taxation and the specific activities to cannabis to come out of this enrollment that we have seen tonight. The process of production of medicinal, not recreational, because my concept has been always scientific in that regards, is giving me to the point in which my research has been validated by different governments in other countries, with the opportunity that, if permitted, we can establish a production facility here in Calexico that will be able to export exclusively out of the country to other countries, to other health systems that truly have found a use for cannabis. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next, we have Javier Gonzalez.
things that we didn't see is the zoning zone, Javier Gonzalez, Kennedy Gardens. And one of the things that I noticed up there was a neighborhood plan. And that, we're very happy. We're not talking about, you already passed a lot of hurdles. And yes, we had the opportunity to come and discuss them. So if she's lying, here's my card. National Neighborhood Watch member from the National Sheriff Association, Javier Gonzalez, Kennedy Gardens Neighborhood Watch captain, the only one in the valley. So if there's a neighborhood plan, we want to be involved. We want to be involved. I'm the only neighborhood watch captain in the valley for 20 years. The only one, if you call, who has been stabbed twice, beaten 13 times. But I'm still here. Why? For the kids. Now, one of the things that worries me, and I've been here for the kids, you know, Mandy, that the kids from boxing recently approached us to help them.
Javier, what does this have to do with the
Okay,
cannabis?
what does it have to do? Now, in that plan, I don't know, the reason you guys put this is because you guys want funds. It's nice. I don't know when is the time that you're going to vote what we're going to do with those revenues.
That is voted on the time when we adopt a budget.
That's not right now?
No, right now it's only to approve.
Okay. So that's going to come up later?
Later, yes.
Okay,
You
that's
will have
fine.
time.
I'll reserve my right for later.
Thank you.
We need it to benefit.
Thank you. You've been beaten up 13 times. You probably don't want to say that to the public. I'm just... Let's move on. Council comments, let's start with my left. Councilman Escobar, do you have any comments on item 9? No comments? No, that's it.
We need to look at this as an economic opportunity for Calexico. Take the ethics away, and you have to focus on the economic development and the opportunities that this will bring to Calexico. From a taxation standpoint, we just heard a presentation on how we are deeply, deeply in trouble. We are one step away from bankruptcy. That is the plain truth. Mrs. Meyer sugarcoated it in a very professional manner. The bottom line is, if we don't fix things and fix things now, we will go into bankruptcy, and it's going to be even more painful for everyone involved, including our community. This is a financial vehicle for increased revenues. And we do this the right way, we will have significant revenue sources if we do this the right way. And I believe we are pursuing this the right way. Thank you.
Councilman Hodge?
Well, that's a major point, Councilman Escobar. Are we doing it the right way? And that's my concern. I do support this based on economic considerations, progress and growth, also on scientific evidence. But I also want to make sure that we hold ourselves accountable. It's open, we're informed, and we have input as to how we're doing this, and are we doing it the right way? Are we doing it the best way, the most secure way? We don't want to blunder at this project, but overall, I support it because we are in dire straits. And but have we done the research? Will it bring in the revenue that we need? That has to be answered. I mean, any revenue is good, but at what cost? How much revenue? Are we sure? These are questions that I have, and hopefully they'll be answered down the road. But initially, I do support this. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Pacheco?
It's, for me, the voters of California voted in November, and it is revenue for the city. It's been said already, but we are in sad, sad shape, and it's just a way of getting us out of the hole.
Thank you. Councilman Hurtado?
One more time. When I first met the proposed project developers, I told them, this is not the time for Calexico. Maybe 2 years down the road, just not the time right now. And it's not the time right now because you heard our police department, which of course, that's another opinion no one has ever asked, is our police department. And they just told you we only have 20 officers covering this whole city. And if you were more aware of our history, you would understand that we are actually on an island, law enforcement-wise, because of our history. So this type of product, we are basically then selling our soul to the devil. Do you want to do that? I don't. I don't think it's worth it. I'd rather have the recovery from what we've gone through as a border city, because don't forget, just last year we also found another drug tunnel. So those kinds of things is what you experience on a border. And I know I see you smiling, but it's very serious. And I told you that very seriously the last time, that as your community leader and understanding the inside of that is going on and why we don't have any money at this point is not just because of bad administration. There is a big C word out there, and that kind of C word took us here. I see this personally as the need to have to make up for a lot of problems, but a lot of this was self-inflicted too. And I see this as purposeful. And many of you see why I feel that way, because as you can see, we have a lot of invested time and money by our attorneys that we hired recently that brought this idea to the city of Calexico. And doesn't appear that anyone really considers our citizens. And that's what is really upsetting in the way that city of Calexico has been operating, and it doesn't stop. And so that's what bothers me. And if you see that I get pretty upset, and I'm sorry, sir, you don't live in Calexico, so you just don't know. So when you come to my city and you want to bring such an offensive type of project with not even bothering to invite your citizens to the discussion, that bothers me, because I've already experienced this kind of business, and apparently this one big shameful situation is being shoved down our throats. You came to our house, you didn't even knock, and you just came in, and you just made yourself at home. So I think that probably we need to do this a little bit over again and make sure that our citizens know what's going on first, and make this fair for them. Make them be allowed to know that you're doing this to them. And that hasn't happened. And I believe that we still need to have more conversations about the process. If you want that, I don't have a problem with the industry. I had cancer myself. I tried some of those products 15 years ago when it happened to me. I am sensitive to the issue, and I am sensitive for you guys all to try to find solutions to these diseases, because it personally happened to me. Go to some other city and do it somewhere else. We're not ready yet. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Thank you. I will reserve my comment till after we vote. I make a motion to approve item
Mr. Mayor,
9.
we still need to close the public hearing. Close the public
Sorry,
hearing.
I will close the public hearing at 9:32.
There's a gentleman.
Did you fill out a form? Okay, I'll make the exception, but you're supposed to fill out a form.
3 minutes.
Hello, this is actually my first public meeting I've ever been to. I live here in Calexico, and I would like to say that I'm for the approval of cannabis production here in Calexico. You guys say you have a financial crisis, right? I feel like it would be at least a good idea to consider approving this, because if we're running out of money, why would we look away when we have a new form of revenue that can come in and perhaps help pay the budget? You guys said you don't have police officers. Well, perhaps you could use some of the tax revenue from cultivating marijuana for getting more police officers. And she's right. We used to. Hold on, sorry, I'm a little nervous. But she's right. We had a drug tunnel last year, and we have illegal marijuana and other drugs coming into the city. But I don't really think that's a reason to ban production of marijuana, because it was illegal back then, and it happened anyway. And to make it legally here would lower the incentives for people to send drugs from south of the border here and put it back in the hands of the citizens who are, like it was shown in the presentation, regulated, observed. We have to make, records for the last 3 years and certain standards of security that we have to meet. I don't think people who operate within the law are really a threat to it, if that's okay to say. That's really about it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now close the public hearing at 9:35 p.m. And I'll make a motion to approve item 9, A and B. Do I have a second?
Second.
You guys can't fight for the second.
Mr. Mayor, if you could just allow me to read the title into the record.
Okay, I'll read the title. Consider adoption of 2 ordinances regarding commercial cannabis regulation activity. A, an ordinance of the City of Calexico, California, amending Title 17 zoning, Chapter 17.11, Article X of the Calexico Municipal Code regarding commercial cannabis activity. Item B, an ordinance of the City of Calexico, California, amending Title 5, Businesses, Licenses, and Regulations, Article 2, Chapter 5.96 of the Calexico Municipal Code regulating commercial cannabis activity. I have a motion made by myself and a second by Councilman, give it to Hodge. Is that okay? Yeah. All in favor?
Here we go.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. To go, no.
It's on the record. It's on the record. 5-0, it's on the record.
Clearly, it's a no.
And again, remember...
You made me want to say yes, but I was
Mr. Mayor,
looking at you, Escobar.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor. We're not going to have dispensaries. We're not going to be sale. We're not. This is not a retail. No, we're going to be cultivating it, yes.
I would like to now make my comment, and first of all, thank Mr. Victor Rocha. I was not aware that we had a scientist in the city that has studied cannabis. I would love to have a coffee with you and maybe go over those studies. I think it's very intriguing. You know, cannabis has completely gone from the drug to the medicine. With the time and the studies, you see doctors now even accepting it and saying, you know what, there has to be something in this plant, and I truly believe that God has it here for a reason, and obviously you have found some medical reasons for it along other people as well. But I wanna say that one of the issues that I find with cannabis, and you touched on that issue as well when you came up here, and it's extremely important, is the education. The majority of people that do not support this is because of the lack of education and the lack of doing their homework on the industry. For example, when you bring up things like policing, people will be shocked to learn that there's really nothing to steal in a warehouse that's growing cannabis. Because if you go in there and take a few plants, guess what? That cannabis can't even be used like that. I mean, it's a process. And someone would have to know the exact hour and the exact date that cannabis will be ready for consumption, which will be nearly impossible to actually run in there with a gun and steal it. The odds of that happening are maybe 1 in a million. I don't know, but they would have to know that was going to happen. And but anyways, again, I just want to thank the council and people. In the past, we also heard about the Brown Act violations and corruption that people were screaming out to the public. They were not true. They were not happening, and they're not happening now. I can guarantee you that. And I think my fellow council members, most of them would agree. We did everything exactly how it should be. And I want to thank the council because, you know what, for the first time, I can say that, Calexico is taking the lead in something. We are being proactive, progressive. We're moving forward. We're showing the whole county that this city council, the majority of this city council we're no longer staying on the sidelines and seeing what other cities do. We're moving forward, not just with this, but with many things to take us out of this hole that we've been in. It's a new day in Calexico, and I'm happy that this was passed. So thank you, everybody. I do have a special request, and Mr. Norma Aguilar, I will grant it if you want to come up before we do our future agenda items and adjourn.
Thank you, Mayor Real, for allowing me to speak. Norma Aguilar, 839 Heber Avenue. Today's Wednesday. And those of you who know me know that I work with the Brown Bag Coalition. And Wednesdays, Brown Bag Coalition feeds the homeless every day, 7:30 at the corner of Heber and 3rd Avenue. And the reason I'm here today is because I want to ask the council to look into something. There's places designated here in Calexico as cool centers, the library being one of them, and the Clínica de Salud being the other. I don't understand how we as a city expect homeless people to travel in this heat over to the Clínica de Salud, nor is there any place there where they can, take shelter in. The other cool center is the library, Camarena Library. The Camarena Library has, from what I'm seeing, a full program of things to do for kids, and that's great. But I don't think any thought has gone into designation of those cool centers. Yesterday was 122, today was 116. I fed 60 people tortas today and gave each of them 4 bottles of water. And I wish you had been there to see how they looked, because I'm afraid that one of these days we're going to find dead people on our streets. And I understand that we're in a crisis, but let me tell you something. If the Brown Bag Coalition, the Maribel Padilla, and I could pull together resources and set up a shelter in less than 4 hours, I think this city can do it. We've been doing it for 2 years, and I will continue to do it. It's not that I'm complaining, but I'm asking you, I'm begging you to take a look at this, because this is a problem. No, not a problem. This is a responsibility that we have to our most vulnerable people in the community.
I would like to ask the city manager, see if maybe we can have a sit down and figure out if there's maybe a property that the city could donate or use or something as a cooling site. I mean, just going outside right now is just ridiculous during the day, and
yeah.
And I mean, unfortunately, I would like to help.
Because of the programs with the library and the homeless, maybe that might not be the most adequate place. I'm
Correct.
thinking out loud
Yes.
with the community center, maybe.
Even the gentleman, I had, I've been telling them, it's designated as a cool center. But as one gentleman told me tonight, he says, I smell. People are not going to want to be around me, and I'm embarrassed to be there. Another gentleman asked me, is there a place where I can shower? They tore down one of the restrooms here and never replaced it. And, I know, like I said, I know that we're in a tough financial situation. But you know what, and I'm going to repeat myself, if we can do it, if I can do it, if Maribel can do it, if the Brown Bag can do something about it, this city can too. Other communities are doing something to help their homeless people, and if I'm not mistaken, there's supposed to be some monies that are coming to municipalities to help address homeless issues. So I'm asking you to take a look, and I'm willing to come and meet with you and the city manager, because this can't continue.
We'll definitely work on it. Fire department's using it. Yeah. It's been given to the fire department for use. Neighborhood house.
Yeah.
I think this is something that we can talk.
Let us
even if it's just for the most.
Let's have a sit down with the city manager and see if we can do.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you for everything you and Maribel do. Thank you.
Thank you for letting me speak.
I don't think so. No, I'm just joking. Yeah, of course. Of course. Of course, you're always welcome in all of our meetings. Future, let's move on so we can get out of here. The novela's going to start. Future agenda items. Does anybody have a future agenda?
Nope.
Nope. Mr. Pacheco?
Are we going dark, Mayor?
Oh.
Are we going dark in July or August, Mayor, City Manager?
Absolutely not.
Don't
No,
we
we
all
have a lot of business.
Trip to Cancun?
Jeez Louise, slave drivers.
Motion to adjourn? Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Vámonos.